Welcome everyone to today's training. We are very excited to welcome Landon Lacey. This has been in the planning for probably a year, and we can see by the really nice turnout how interested you all are in this topic of theory of mind. And she has connected it to literature in a way that I'm so looking forward to this. So please join me in welcoming Landon Lacey.
Do I need to hold both? Right. Hi, I'm Landon Lacey. I flew in from Charleston, South Carolina yesterday, but I moved to Charleston from Chicago. So I lived here for about 10 years. I love Chicago, I love Illinois, and I'm really happy to be able to be back. So thank you for having me. I don't normally sound like this. I'm like on the verge of losing my voice, and this is a long conference, so everybody say a little prayer that it really kicks in, or at least stays like this for the whole time. But thank you for your patience with me. So a little bit of background about me. I'm a speech pathologist. I'm an auditory verbal therapist, and I worked with really young kids. This cohort here today also works with older kids. We work with people that have visual impairments. And so I tried to tailor this workshop and my information to everyone here. But that being said, I'm happy to learn from you as well. So I love participation. If you guys have questions, life experience, suggestions for your colleagues, please feel free to flag me down. We'll just pass the microphone around so everyone can participate. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna get into this presentation. My disclosure is that I work for MUSC, the Medical University of South Carolina. I work part-time only with children with hearing loss, and I have a couple of very old people on my caseload as well. And this is just evidence of me. I worked at Child's Voice when I was here. This is me doing therapy with a little one. It's really just here as proof that I'm not just a researcher putting information out there. I have lived this stuff, I've seen it. So while this presentation is heavily based in research, it's also based in experience. And this is me in the circle here. And this is a way of showing you guys why I'm interested in the topic of theory of mind. So my mom is next to me, and she has had like lifelong ADHD. And ADHD impacts theory of mind development. So she kind of I was raised by someone with mediocre theory of mind, and she would agree with all this. And then my dad is on the right, and he is a radio show host, which is part of the reason why I talk into microphones. But he is also a self-described narcissist. And so people that are very interested in themselves can have a hard time figuring out the thoughts and feelings of others. So I grew up with poor theory of mind. It was modeled poorly for me. I don't have vision loss, I don't have hearing loss, but in my home there was a deficit, and it was something that made it harder for me to make friends. And then I started working on it. I could observe other people around me, and I got better and better at it. But it impacted me socially growing up. And then I got to graduate school, and I realized that children with hearing loss and adults with hearing loss can struggle with theory of mind, and it made me sad. I was like, they don't need to do this. We can change this. They don't have to live life with a struggle here socially. So my goal with this presentation is to bring it to your awareness if it's not already something that you're aware of, and to give you really, really, really practical tools that you can use moving forward. The focus of it is through books. Literacy to me is everything. I've got a sticker on a computer here that just says read more books, and I agree. Books are absolutely everything. So you can do so much of this therapy just with books. All right, so I want to get to know you guys briefly. Can you raise your hand if you only work with children with hearing loss? Okay, what about children, adolescents with vision loss? Awesome, what about both? Very, very cool, okay. I'm just getting the lay of the land. Raise your hand if you use sign language, please. Oh, that's awesome. Today is a day where I wish that I did, and I could just sign this whole workshop. Okay, and wanted to see, oh, raise your hand if theory of mind, and you have to be brave. Raise your hand if theory of mind is a totally new concept. Awesome. Okay, raise your hand if you're like, I kind of know what it is, but don't ask me to plan a lesson around it. Raise your hand if you're like, I could teach this. That's awesome.
I was in your class before.
Oh, that's why you can teach it. Raise your hand if you've seen me talk before. Yes, okay, that's great. Besides you, right? Okay. I love that this is information that you guys I hope are gonna walk away excited about. So this is my why I do it. Today, these are our learner objectives. I hope everybody is able to understand how theory of mind develops in typically developing children. What does this usually look like? That's usually where we start. Understand what impacts theory of mind development and what is impacted by theory of mind development. Those are kind of two different things. Why children with hearing and vision loss are at risk for a delay in theory of mind. Why literacy is impacted. And then I really, this second to last one is big for me. I really want you guys to be able to identify a hierarchy of development for targeting theory of mind using books. When you walk out of here, I never want you to look at a book the same ever again. Whether it's like an adult mystery or Dear Zoo for a 2-year-old. Books, I think, can transform if you start categorizing them based on theory of mind. And then I want you to integrate strategies to target theory of mind using literacy into your caseload. Because today, it's really about you. I want you to be able to walk into whatever situation you have going on next week, tomorrow, and be able to know what to do and how to do it. All right. So this is how I want to think about everything. We know that when we work with kids, we're not just working with them, we're also engaging with their parents. So parents and caregivers. So I want you to think about engaging this information with caregivers, involving them in this conversation, because these kids can't get better without parents. You guys saw what happened with me and my parents. We want you guys to partner with parents and caregivers. What books are they reading? How are they reading it? What questions are we asking? What do they understand about it? And then ultimately, I want you guys to feel confident in being able to transfer this information to parents and caregivers. For a lot of you, theory of mind might feel kind of like this big, abstract concept. And when you leave today, I want you to say to yourself, I know how to explain this to a caregiver, and I know what books to recommend. So we're going to define the terms to start with. And all of these terms are similar, but they're not synonyms. We're looking at the field of social emotional development. If you're here today, you probably could guess that. You know, theory of mind has something to do with how kids are developing social emotionally. And it has something to do with pragmatics. Pragmatics is the social use of language. It's not syntax, it's not looking at grammar. This is how we use language socially, which really is the point of language. It has something to do with executive functioning, ADD, ADHD. Children that have those diagnoses and adults with them have trouble with executive functioning. If you don't have enough self-control to pause for a second, then you're not going to be able to really pay attention to what somebody is telling you. Emotional intelligence, emotional IQ, this has been a buzzword for about 10 years. It falls under this category. Behavior, how children are behaving is impacted by theory of mind. If they don't judge their behavior as good or bad in the eyes of others, then they can't adapt it. And then finally, theory of mind, and what actually is that? So let's pull theory of mind apart. Oh, and false belief. We'll talk about false belief after we pull theory of mind apart. So let's look at some of these words. When I first started doing this, I pulled a lot of speech pathologists, audiologists, therapists, teachers of the deaf, and I asked them to describe socially kids with hearing loss. And kids with hearing loss are resilient, They are kind, they are altruistic, they are lots of amazing things. But these were some of the negative things that they said kids with hearing loss can be described as. And I hate this slide. It makes me cringe every time I put it up because I know a million kids with hearing loss that are my heroes in life. But in school, their friends can describe them this way. And it makes it hard for them to function socially. I'm not saying that all kids with hearing loss experience life like this, but I'm saying that they get described this way more than typically hearing kids. And I don't think that they have to. I think that with great intervention and awareness, we can help these kids move forward in a really amazing, strong way socially. So as I said, this whole workshop is based on research. And each of these slides with a purple microphone refers to an article that I read in the past. And I spent about a year reading articles before I began presenting. And these are ones that I found particularly powerful. So let's look at this one together. The possession of a theory of mind permits us to reason about the mental states of others and to understand and anticipate how these differ from our own reality. A lack of theory of mind would be a formidable obstacle to all sophisticated forms of human social interaction. We don't want any obstacles for these kids. They already have an access obstacle with sound, and we really want these kids to be able to overcome any kind of obstacle, especially social. So if theory of mind is an obstacle for them, then it's something that we should be targeting in therapy. Here's another quote. When children acquire a theory of mind, they become capable of predicting and explaining what's in their own and other people's minds and understanding how mental states influence behavior. And this was kind of my call to action, this slide. Children with typical hearing enter kindergarten with a basic theory of mind, while many deaf children do not. And I want to pause right now and address the people in the room that also work with children with vision loss. So in the past, there has been a lot of research that shows that children with vision loss can also struggle with theory of mind. And I've got more things addressing that, but there actually is more and more research coming out now showing that individuals with hearing loss or with vision loss do not struggle to the extent of children with hearing loss. They have come up with better measures of assessing children with vision loss and are finding that they can be delayed in theory of mind, but not as much as kids with hearing loss. And a lot of times by adulthood, they are not showing a deficit. So if you have somebody that you're working with that you love that has vision loss, I would encourage you to just have it on your radar. This could be something that they're struggling with, but for those of you that work with children with hearing loss, I would encourage you to think, I need to work on this, and the children that don't struggle with this would be the outlier, if that makes sense. Okay. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions, comments? I'm happy to pass the microphone around. Everybody good? Okay, well then we're gonna move into defining theory of mind. What is it? Theory of mind is the ability to attribute mental states, like beliefs, intentions, desires, pretending, and knowledge to oneself and to others, and to understand that others have beliefs, desires, intentions, and perspectives that are different from one's own. But that's kind of a mouthful. I wouldn't expect you to want to explain this to a caregiver. This is what we're gonna work on today. And so really all it is an ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to be able to take their perspective. So what I usually will tell parents is, hey, sometimes kids with hearing loss or sometimes kids with vision loss have trouble taking other people's perspectives. So we're just gonna start working on that, if that's okay. And usually that doesn't seem as big and academic and frightening as your child is struggling with theory of mind. It's just perspective taking, that's all it is. So that's a great way that you can phrase it to caregivers. So why do we call it a theory? Is this like a theory of gravity, a theory of relativity? It's called a theory because one person theorizes about what is in another person's mind. I have a theory of your mind. I don't actually know what you're thinking, because I'm not you. I can know my husband really, really well. And so I have a pretty good theory of his mind. If he makes the stink face, if he comes in smiling, I can kind of guess what he's thinking and feeling. But you guys, I don't know you. And so I'm looking at your faces and I'm trying to figure out, are they focusing on the presentation? Are they frustrated with me? Do they need glasses? Are they happy? So I'm trying right now to develop a theory of your mind just by observing you. This is what we do all day. Adults all day long try to have a theory of other people's minds. And the better that we are at it, the better that we interact socially with others. And we'll talk a lot about kind of why that happens, why it impacts us socially. But I would argue that one of the biggest reasons is that it lets us predict what other people are going to do if we know how they're feeling. And it lets us adapt our behavior based on what we're predicting. And that's a lot. That's a lot of work. Ooh, I think he's a little frustrated today. I might go do this over here for a minute. Or, oh my gosh, my boss seems really excited. Now's a good time to talk about a raise. Those kinds of things. So we can break it down a little bit more. Theory of mind can be broken into cognitive theory of mind and affective theory of mind. Cognitive is really just words about thinking, like I thought, I knew, I didn't know. Affective theory of mind is feeling words. I loved, I hated, I felt disappointed, confused. So those are two ways that we can look at breaking them apart. It's not really super important. Just keep in mind that there are subsections of theory of mind. And then we can break it even further into interpersonal and intrapersonal. And so it's looking at the idea that we are trying to figure out other people, but we're also trying to figure out ourselves. I'll give you an example. Today, I sat up here and I felt excited and nervous. I had two feelings at once. And so that's my intrapersonal affective theory of mind. Thinking about thinking, oh, I thought I knew where it was, but I didn't know. That's intrapersonal cognitive theory of mind. And then the same thing with other people. She felt worried, she felt confused, that's intrapersonal. So there are different ways that we can break it down. I'm not gonna perseverate on this slide because it's really not something that you're gonna use every day when you're thinking about working with kids with theory of mind. But if you're interested in moving forward in this field, it is a deep field of study. All right, so are you guys swapping? Great. All right, so I'm gonna pass this around for maybe just a minute, and I'd love your suggestions on why you feel like theory of mind is important day to day. What does it impact? And this is really just super casual.
I think it impacts.
Let me give you this too. Learning.
I think it impacts how children or adults react to certain situations. It can be either escalated or de-escalated based on their theory of mind.
Absolutely. And when we get to the section on misunderstandings, I think that exact point will come up. Totally. Yes.
So I was just going to say, similar to that, it affects peer relationships a lot. There's a lot of peer conflict because of theory of mind deficits.
I completely agree. I would argue that almost all conflict comes from theory of mind deficits. Absolutely.
Just to build off that, I was going to say their ability to make and maintain friendships.
I completely agree. A lot of these kids come in hot and then the friendships can fade. Making and maintaining friendships is affected by theory of mind. Sorry.
It can help with the growth of empathy towards others.
Absolutely. It has so much to do with empathy, taking somebody's perspective and feeling their pain.
It impacts students' abilities to work together on group projects.
Totally. It affects collaboration, yes.
I think it might impact coworkers because you really need to think of that positive intent when you're having a discussion with somebody, because if you don't, then it could go the wrong way. But if you have that positive intent, it will help you problem solve with solutions.
I completely agree with that. And I'd like to give an example from this morning regarding looking for positive intent in social situations. My husband, I live in Charleston, and he had to drop my kids off at school this morning for the first time. And he had some questions, even though I sent a small novel of instructions. And he called, had some questions, and then I got in the shower this morning, so I was clean for you. And then he called me 5 more times while I was in the shower. And he texted and said, I know that you're trying to get ready and you want to save your voice, but can you please just answer the phone? I did not get the most generous interpretation of what I could possibly be doing. So he thought that I was ignoring him. I was actually just in the shower and could not answer the phone. And that is kind of a theory of mind thing. If he could put himself in my perspective and think through my morning routine, what could she be doing right now? She's not screening my calls. And we're seeing this with kids all the time. We're seeing this in middle school. And we'll talk about misunderstandings and repairs and how we can help kids move forward in those situations.
Hi. I see it impacting learning and literacy, not only being able to comprehension when reading and understanding the characters and their intent, but also I feel like theory of mind is the first critical thinking that our brain starts to do, and I see that our students learning more through memorization and not critical thinking and not synthesizing and applying their knowledge. So I think that that's the foundation that we're missing.
I completely agree with that as well. Being able to synthesize information is so important, and they're just kind of memorizing things. Knowing vocabulary words and syntax doesn't mean you can answer a content question on the SAT. Sherry, did you have a question?
I was going to ask you to repeat what she said. We couldn't hear.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you mind repeating? Sorry. I'll get you closer.
I'll try. It left my brain once I said it. I see it impacting learning and literacy, not only literacy in terms of comprehending what characters are doing in their intent and picking up on their perspective, but also theory of mind is I feel it's one of the first critical thinking skills that we develop as humans, and that is impacted in the way our students are learning. They're memorizing more instead of critically thinking about things and synthesizing and applying their knowledge to think differently.
Yep, that was great. Thank you. Yes, I'm walking over to you. I've got the mic.
I guess I would say that I think it can also make people feel sometimes prejudged if they don't know how to interpret a situation. As you were, indicating, about your husband even. So I think it often makes people feel prejudged a lot.
I completely agree with that. And we prejudge because we have to. We're humans, and it gives us a shorthand. If you're interested in that subject of the idea that we as humans prejudge, it's very linked with theory of mind. There's a great book out called Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's a great listen. I listened to it on audiobook, but the whole idea is that as adults, I'm seeing a head nod, don't you think? It's so good. As adults, we're terrible at this. We are terrible at theory of mind. I mean, that book nailed it down for me. I was like, how can we expect kids to do it? We're terrible at it. I teach this, and my husband's bad at it. All right, so you're right. It is super important. I'm going to highlight some other ways that it's important. We already talked about social skills. How can we work on that? We can be explicit with these kids. With typically developing kids with no vision loss, a lot of times they pick up on things incidentally. For kids with hearing loss and vision loss, they might need you to be explicit about what's expected socially, what the child did well socially and how others are feeling. So I'm just going to show you a couple examples here. This is an example of what you could say to be explicit with a child about what's expected socially. Remember, we're going to lunch with grandma later. I like when you sit in your chair until after lunch is over, and then we can go to the park. You can get some energy out. Just be that is so easy. If a kid is coming in to work with you, this is what I expect about you socially. I expect you to keep your hands to yourself, and then you can go on the playground, okay? This is a mom praising, letting a child know exactly what the child did right. Praising behavior increases behavior, we know that. Start praising the great pro-social, pro-theory of mind behavior. I like how you shared your trike with Aiden, that was so kind of you. You're labeling the other child's feelings. It made him feel happy. You have an impact on others. And then this one is letting him know what he didn't do and then brainstorming some ways that you can make a difference. Cooper did not like when you played rough. What can we do differently next time? I will say, for those of you especially that are primarily working with older kids, I've been through this presentation like 10 times recently, just making sure that it applies to these older kids, and all of this stuff does. Just because this is worded for a young child doesn't mean that you can't adapt this to a middle schooler. Yeah, well, Sarah didn't like how you borrowed her car and didn't return it for a couple of days. You know, just all of this still applies to older kids and husbands. There are so many books out there that explicitly teach feelings, and a lot of times when I start this workshop, people think that most of my book suggestions are going to be this kind of book. And these kinds of books are great. This is just one series. There's probably 50 of them out there, and they explicitly teach how to keep your hands to yourself, how to say you're sorry, all that kind of stuff. So if you have a kiddo that needs you to be explicit, there is a lot out there. And then this is something that I'm going to send out after the workshop. There's a handout from Hands and Voices specifically about social competency and theory of mind in children with hearing loss. So it's a great read. If you have caregivers that are interested in this stuff, it's a great read for them too. It's very accessible. So I mean, you can easily find it if you go to handsandvoices.org and you search for theory of mind, but I'm happy to send it out as well. Just really great information. All right, the second one is humor. This is the one most people don't get on their own. It's critical. It's critical because these kids are being funny and ridiculous humans all day long. They are silly, their friends are teasing, and a lot of times kids with hearing loss, I'm not sure about vision loss, but I know kids with hearing loss can be very literal and a little bit gullible, and they're not getting the double meanings, and they might be laughing along, but they might not be understanding. So teaching them humor is an appropriate thing for you guys to be doing. It helps with their social skills. Being able to be funny with the other kids on the playground helps build friendships. I'm gonna pause for just a second because I've realized that I don't have a slide in here on something that I think is really important, and I wanna address it up front before we get any farther. When I say children with hearing loss can struggle with theory of mind, I do not ever mean children that are born deaf to deaf parents. Children that are born deaf to deaf parents have very typically developing theory of mind. Sign language is a full language, and the kids develop very normal interactions socially. The deficit for kids with hearing loss comes when there's like a deprivation in exposure, if that makes sense. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I made that clear up front. Hearing loss by itself is not like a reason to have a deficit, which is actually why we're here today, because it responds to input, right? Okay, so humor can be looked at in a lot of different ways. Double meanings, sarcasm, faux pas, unanticipated endings, situational comedies, things that are funny in the moment. This is not exhaustive, but it's just showing, humor is looks at different things are funny for a lot of different reasons. And so let's look at double meanings here. Here's my very bad joke. I apologize. What did the fish say when it swam into the wall? Anybody? Damn. Okay. It's a double meaning. You have to be able to pivot just a little bit and go, oh, I see what you did there. And that takes a level of theory of mind. So any of those dad jokes, puns, stuff like that, those are based on double meanings. And that can be hard to do if you have poor theory of mind. We'll talk a little bit more down the road about bilingualism, like speaking Spanish and English, sign language and English. And those kids do better because they can look at it from a different angle, if that makes sense. Same thing, different way of looking. So sometimes kids with hearing loss are missing the double meaning. There's a lot of books in the library that have jokes where there's just like a pun at the end. Rent those books and talk to them about why it's funny. Oh, it's funny because it's this and this. I wouldn't do the damn one, but you know, there's a lot of good ones. Sarcasm is a big one. Sarcasm is when you say pretty much the opposite of what you mean. Good job participating today. It's in your tone, it's in the situation, and sometimes kids are missing this. They think that you're being serious. Kids with cochlear implants, so my background, I worked for Med-El for a few years, and I spent a lot of time around kids with cochlear implants. And I really feel like kids with cochlear implants especially can struggle with tone and sarcasm. Things can get flattened. This is not true across the books. I've talked to a lot of adults that hear tone really well, but I've talked to a lot of other people that don't. Music is impacted. And so if music is impacted, if all of a sudden the Beatles sounds flat, then maybe good job participating today also sounds a little bit different. And so sarcasm can really be impacted for kids with hearing loss. So this is a great time to be explicit. Tell a kid what sarcasm is. Maybe set up an opportunity for them to identify, was this person being sarcastic or not? I mean, I personally really hate sarcasm. It causes a lot of miscommunication, but it is a reason why kids are falling behind socially. Kids use it. They use sarcasm a lot. Being able to anticipate an ending to a joke and then have it change at the last minute. This is Mitch Hedberg. He says, I haven't slept for 10 days because that would be too long. You know, being able to go, oh, I see what you did there. Faux pas, this is where George Bush called the Spanish Prime Minister a goose because his name was Anzar and he called him Ansar, which is goose, and everybody thought that was funny. Faux pas can be funny, calling somebody by the wrong name, and just being able to identify when a faux pas has happened socially, that person did one, or realize, you know, I just did a faux pas, how am I gonna repair? Am I gonna be able to kind of stumble and pick myself up and make myself, you know, okay again in the eyes of my friends, or do I go to the bathroom and cry? So all of these things, I think, play into whether a child's able to have a sense of humor about others and themselves. And in situational comedies, and I don't necessarily mean just on TV, life is funny in a lot of ways. And being able to see the humor in it, I think, is important. In this particular clip, there's like multiple layers here. If you guys follow Jennifer Aniston, it's funny because her on-screen boyfriend is not high-fiving her husband in real life, but then in the show, it's a different story. So just being able to be aware socially of who's talking to whom, why it might be a funny thing or an interesting thing to pay attention to, all of this takes a lot of effort on the part of these kids. And I hope that explains why humor is strongly impacted by theory of mind. Moral decision making is impacted by theory of mind. In order for you to make a good ethical decision, like throwing away the trash that you accidentally knocked on the floor instead of letting it sit there, you have to be able to view yourself in the eyes of others. Moral decision making means that you can view your behavior as good or bad through other people's perspectives, not just what's easy for you, Bending over and picking up the trash and putting it away in the trash can might be harder for you, but you're gonna do it for the greater good, or you're gonna do it because somebody's watching. Either way, your moral decision making is impacted by what's going on around you. Because if you lived in a forest by yourself, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter. We're judging it based on other people. So there's a lot of studies on this. This was a great one. In order for a personal set of moral standards to develop, children need to be able to judge their own behavior through other people's eyes. And in this study by Ketlar, it was a 2015 one, it found that children with hearing loss have more trouble making positive moral decisions than typically hearing kids. They were given specific anecdotes and stories and asked what they would do instead. And they scored lower on moral understanding and moral reasoning than typically hearing kids. And that breaks my heart because it's presented like they're bad, immoral people, and they're not. They're not. They're getting mislabeled and mistreated because they didn't understand the situation socially. They did not understand what was expected out of them. And if you get kind of labeled that over and over and over again, it sinks in. So I really want these kids to have an opportunity to have things made explicit to them so that they know what the good moral decision is, because they're not bad. They're just doing their best. So ultimately, we want this face, not this face. We want our kids to be able to realize when they did something and how to repair it. We talked about this. It impacts empathy. How do we develop empathy? We're going to talk about it with books. But honestly, I really feel like pretend play is a great way to develop empathy. If you've got, once kids are too old for it, you're not going to be able to get it out of them. But if you're working with the younger ones, there's never a wrong time for pretend play, especially coaching caregivers to do it. Kids are more likely to refer to mental state words when they do pretend play. Their false belief scores are found to correlate with how often they participate in pretend play. So if they're sitting there on their iPad playing, I don't even know, what do they play? Roblox. If they're playing those games, they're not engaging in pretend play. What they're finding is that their score, we'll talk about false belief later, but their theory of mind scores are lower. And so how can we help parents engage in pretend play? You can start by asking them what they know about it. Ask them if they're comfortable with it. A lot of parents are not. That you can empower them with information. Okay, you're not comfortable with it, but this is why it's good. This is why it's helpful. You can brainstorm activities that they would both like to do together. I think that's always really helpful. Okay, you don't want to play kitty cat where you drink milk out of a bowl. I get that. But what if you do this? What if you guys build a rocket ship and blast off around the backyard together? And then implement the activities together, and then come back, circle back to you and reflect on them. This kind of cycle of coaching with caregivers, I think, is so powerful. You can't do pretend play all day with these kids. Take off your cape and transfer it to them. Go home and do pretend play. Turn the iPad off. This is how it's going to benefit. Your kids' social skills will be better. It helps with collaboration. We talked about collaboration over here. Collaborating means being able to realize who's good at what and dividing up the material. You've got middle schoolers, maybe one of them kind of takes the lead, wants to do it all. The quiet kid doesn't get to do enough. Being able to collaborate means everybody's able to participate and they all know who's good at what. This is impactful through adulthood. So starting these kids early with skills on collaborating is critical. I kind of already talked through this. Okay. So you can set up therapy or set up classrooms to need more collaboration, to provide more collaborating times. Doing a cooking activity, if kids are all pretty bad at collaborating, start with partners of 2, work them up to 4, and then come around and explicitly say, who is doing what? Oh, it sounds like you're doing a lot and you're not doing much of anything. What are you good at? What are you good at? What do you not like doing? Okay, let's divide it up based on that so that they're putting themselves in other people's shoes. This person does not like getting their hands messy, so I'll mix the Play-Doh. But this person is very precise, so they're gonna measure the ingredients. It gets them thinking about, like a leader, who's good at what? How can we get from point A to point B? By the way, leaders have good theory of mind, typically. Behavior and theory of mind are related in the same exact way as moral decision making, being able to judge your behavior as good or bad through the eyes of others. Kids are not gonna act well if they can't judge their behavior through others. If you guys have kids, you probably saw a big shift in behavior around 4 to 6. That's when kids start to really come online with theory of mind, because they start to go, I'm not just gonna do absolutely everything I want and kick the cereal across the floor if I don't get it. They'll say, ooh, I think mom is not gonna like if I do that, and there's gonna be this consequence, or I don't wanna have to clean this up. So behavior and theory of mind are very heavily related. Challenging behavior can be a huge deal. This is in the Oval Office, and this mom is saying, I have never seen this child before in my life, and I have felt this way in Target myself. These parents want behavior to improve. You want behavior to improve. You're working with these kids. Behavior is getting in the way of your lesson planning. Behavior and theory of mind are related. The more you target theory of mind, the better theory of mind these kids have, the more that you will see problem behaviors decrease. And sometimes adults have bad behavior too. I mean, we're not always very well behaved ourselves. So I think these kids need grace. They need you to say, that was not a good choice. Here's why. What will you do differently next time? Being really explicit. So what's our role as a therapist in working on behavior? Because it is in our wheelhouse. I would argue that. I don't think this is like a PTOT thing. I think that anybody who is working on children's language is also working on their pragmatics and their social skills, and that is related to behavior. This is appropriate to work on. So we can establish routines with these kids. If they know what's coming next, then they know how to emotionally prepare. So if you've got terrible behavior going on in one of your kids' homes, you can encourage a parent, okay, you might need to get more routine-based here, and this is why. You can explain misunderstandings. We will talk about this multiple times throughout the workshop, but my phrase is, you thought this, but they thought this. I say that 5 times a day. I have a 4 and a 5-year-old. And I say it constantly. I said it to my husband this morning. You thought I was ignoring you, but I was in the shower. I mean, this should be a part of just take this with you and go. Explaining misunderstandings is huge. Labeling feelings, I feel like that's pretty common sense. Oh, you're crying because you feel jealous. Stating your preferences. I like when you let me finish talking and then we can go back to making cookies together. I'm just gonna take a quick phone call. Instead of sit down, be quiet, go in another room. This is what I like. I like when I can finish a phone call without you pestering me. Model the management yourself, modeling behaviors that you want to see happen. I don't always do this. I tell my kids, sit down while you're eating, and I'll be walking around while I'm saying it, holding an apple. So we really need to model behavior management ourselves, and you can talk it out with the kids. You know what? I'm gonna take a deep breath, spend a couple minutes by myself in the other room, and when I come back in, I'm gonna be ready to talk. So modeling the behavior is great. And then just really making expectations clear. I know you can do this. This is what I expect. I can't wait to celebrate you after you do the right thing. All right, likability is impacted. So likability is different than social skills because I know you all have someone in your life that is very socially appropriate. I don't know who it is. It might be your mother-in-law, it might be a colleague, but they've got the thank you notes down. They always bring a little bouquet of flowers. They remember things to ask about you, and nobody likes them, right? There are people out there who have great social skills. They know the rules. They're still not likable. And then there are people that break all the social rules. And everybody likes them because they're fun, they're funny. There's just something about that warm person that doesn't follow the rules, but you still love them. So this is really technically popularity. And popularity throughout a lot of research is related to theory of mind. The higher theory of mind that you have, especially with girls, the more likable that you are. Boys are a little bit different. They can kind of plow through. If they're good at throwing a football, they might just be popular. But the research does show that the more theory of mind skills that you have, the more likable you are. And this is ratings by other students. In this study, other students rated their peers, and the teacher rated the students based on how likable they were. And then all of the students were given theory of mind assessments, and likability was strongly correlated with doing well on theory of mind assessments. So this is the meta-analysis of theory of mind and peer popularity. It looked at 20 different studies. Hold on. This got stuck. Preschool and school-age children who have a good understanding of others' mental states are at the same time liked or seen as popular among their peers, and those with a relatively poor theory of mind are disliked or rejected. So what can we do? We can target theory of mind early. It's never too early. Start it with little bitty babies. You can transfer your knowledge to parents. You can highlight, we'll talk more about mental state words, but we can highlight mental state words, discuss people's feelings, and increase the connectedness of conversation, encouraging kids to pause, let someone else speak, and then give them a chance to speak and go back and forth. Because if you remember the first slide, one of the things that was up there said that these children get accused of talking too much or not talking enough. And being able to encourage a nice balance back and forth can help their peer relationships. It'll help them be more liked. And predict what characters or their friends will feel and do. And then that brings me to literacy. I'm not going to talk about literacy right now because we're going to do a deep dive on it, but I wanted to take a minute for you guys to practice transferring this to a parent. If you don't mind, look at the person sitting next to you, find a partner. If you're in an odd number, do threes, and decide who will be the therapist. And I have therapists in here because I'm a speech pathologist, teacher, social worker, whatever it is that you're doing, apply this to yourself. And who will be the parent or the caregiver, and then practice explaining the importance of theory of mind. So I want you to see if you can remember what phrase you can use instead of theory of mind, pick what age group you'd be talking about, and how you might say, hey, this is something that we want to work on. So we'll come back in about 3 minutes, and then maybe you guys could volunteer, a couple of you, how you would explain this to a caregiver. Who would like to volunteer either themselves or a colleague that did a particularly fantastic job explain the importance of theory of mind to a caregiver? I like when people volunteer their friends. Yes. I can volunteer myself. Would you mind coming up so that we can get it all? Okay, I'm going to give you both of them to hold.
Okay.
I like your necklace. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Okay, should I introduce myself?
Sure.
Okay. Hi, my name is Emily Bayo. I'm a teacher of the deaf, first-year teacher. But what I explained with my colleague and how I explained it to the parents is that we're trying to make our students more socially aware and giving them perspective. So my input to the parent was sending home like ASL feeling charts, so one, we can label the emotions, have open communication, modeling what thinking out loud feels like Miss Bayo's overwhelmed. I can start rainbow breathing. I could go to the calming corner and teach the kids how I self-regulate here, and then hopefully they can pick up on that, which can be used at home. Then I also talked about, like, for creative play, if we're very busy, give your students purpose. So maybe when you're cooking dinner, explain what you're doing, pretend you're having a cooking show. Because if you don't have time to have family time, at least we're giving them purpose with things we're already doing in our daily life, which is, oh, like, pretend you're talking to the camera, and now we're making chicken noodle soup, and just pretend play in the kitchen, something they're already doing. That was my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. I love that suggestion, especially meeting the parents where they are with pretend play, talking about perspective taking instead of using theory of mind, the scary phrase. That was great. Thank you. And welcome to the field. Is there anyone else who would like to share or volunteer, someone particularly eloquent? None of you are eloquent? Guys, I know that somebody else can share out something fantastic that they had to say. Anybody? All right, it's time to volunteer your partners. Please give me one more, Sherry. Okay. Thank you, Sherry. This is one of my presenter strategies. It's called Volunteer Your Friend. So get ready.
All right, so if I was explaining theory of mind to a parent, I would say that theory of mind is being able to guess what another person is thinking or feeling in a situation. And that when we can guess how, if a situation happens, and we can guess how another person feels or thinks, it's gonna affect their social skills, it's gonna affect their behavior, it's gonna help with their academics. And so we wanna teach our kids to be able to guess what other people are thinking or feeling in any situation.
I always learn so much from people sharing. It's selfish. I love to hear what people have to say. Guess is such a good word. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I have never really thought about guess. When you have a theory, you have a guess, right? That's a great other way to put it. Yeah, we want to guess what people are thinking and feeling. We don't know. We have a hunch. Thank you. That was excellent. All right, so I'm going to move on to kind of a quick explanation of maybe why this happens in humans. I'm not a scientist, but I have a guess. And then after that, we'll take a bathroom break. You guys can grab some coffee if you'd like. So I think that part of the reason why humans do this is because of mirror neurons. Have any of you heard of mirror neurons before? Yeah, maybe back in college or something. So humans are different than rabbits, than salamanders. We're different in a way. And part of that to me is theory of mind, our ability to empathize, our ability to guess what other people are thinking. Some animals are okay at it. Your dog, elephants, dolphins, what's going on there? And so some researchers argue that mirror neurons have something to do with it. So I'm going to show you this quick video clip explaining what mirror neurons are and what they do, and how it kind of gives humans this empathic drive. I will warn you, this goes really fast. Are you ready? Okay. I'm so sorry that this guy talks so fast. It drives me nuts, but it is a quick video.
Let me take you back to the early 1990s. Sleepy little laboratory in Parma, Italy, and scientists had a MRI brain scanning machine on a macaque monkey as the macaque monkey was trying to open up a nut. They wanted to see how the neurons would light up. So the monkey's trying to open up the nut, the neurons light up, and just by serendipity, and this is how science sometimes happens, a human being walked into the laboratory, I don't know if it was by mistake, and he was hungry, he saw the nuts and opened up one of the nuts and tried to crack it open. The macaque monkey was totally shocked because who was this invader in his laboratory? And he didn't move. He just gazed at this human trying to open up the nut, just like he had done a few seconds earlier. And then the scientist looked on the MRI brain scanner, the same exact neurons were lighting up when he observed the human being opening the nut as when the monkey opened the nut, and the scientists had not a clue as to what this was. They thought the MRI machine had broken. They then began to put MRI brain scanning machines on other primates, especially chimpanzees with our big neocortex. Then they went to humans, and what they found over and over again is something called mirror neurons. And that is that we are apparently soft-wired, some of the primates, all humans. We suspect elephants. We're not sure about dolphins and dogs. We've just begun. But all humans are soft-wired with mirror neurons so that if I'm observing you, your anger, your frustration, your sense of rejection, your joy, whatever it is, and I can feel what you're doing, the same neurons will light up in me as if I'm having that experience myself. Now, this isn't all that unusual. We know if a spider goes up someone's arm and I'm observing it going up your arm, I'm going to get a creepy feeling. We take this for granted, but we are actually soft-wired to actually experience another's plight as if we are experiencing ourselves. But mirror neurons are just the beginning of a whole range of research going on in neuropsychology and brain research and in child development that suggests that we are actually soft-wired, not for aggression and violence and self-interest and utilitarianism, that we are actually soft-wired for sociability, attachment, as John Bowlby might have said, affection, companionship, and that the first drive is the drive to actually belong. It's an empathic drive.
So I do think that mirror neurons have something to do with why we are how we are. So as we study this today, just remember that this is about the mind. And the mind is malleable, it's changeable, and what we're doing to impact these kids with hearing loss is changing their ability to think about others. It's very cool stuff. All right, this is another handout. This is a gold nugget that I'm going to be sending out afterwards. It's from hearingfirst.org, and it's an article about what theory of mind is, how to target it with kids with hearing loss. It's from, it's from Hearing First, and it's parent-friendly, it's caregiver-friendly, so it's worded in language where if you wanted to say, we're going to help your kid guess what other people are thinking and feeling, here's a handout on it to go along with it. Just another way to support you. So that wraps up this section. Does anyone have questions about, basically what theory of mind is? We all feel like, hey, I've got this now. It was a little abstract, but now I'm feeling good. Okay. All right, we're going to move into a new section where we're going to look at things that can impact theory of mind development. And some of them might be obvious things, and some of them might be aha moments. So the first is developmental disabilities. Can anyone off the top of your head shout out a developmental disability that might have an impact on their theory of mind development? Autism, yeah. This field largely started with autism. Simon Baron-Cohen is a researcher out of England. He is the cousin of Sacha Baron Cohen, who is Borat. But he's done a ton of research on theory of mind and autism, and that's where this field started. And then we started applying it to other disabilities and looking at kids with hearing loss. ADD and ADHD, like I said with my mom, these kids oftentimes struggle with theory of mind. They have to have enough executive functioning to stop what they're doing, follow a conversation, remember the information. They have to restrict impulses on what they want to talk about and talk about what other people are interested in instead. Major impacts on ADD and ADHD. Schizophrenia is theory of mind is impacted if you have schizophrenia. Not a lot of people do. Personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, just extreme narcissism, self-absorption, those kinds of diagnostic disorders where you're very, very insular and you can't get outside of yourself. Those impact theory of mind. And autism, which is probably the one that everybody thinks about, and hearing loss, and to some extent vision loss. So the sensory deprivation. This is part of the reason why children with hearing loss can be diagnosed incorrectly with autism. There's a researcher out of New York. She's a physician, and I attended her conference a while ago. I feel terrible. I don't remember what her name is, but she has a whole presentation on separating out autism from hearing loss. And I think that it is really important to do, because kids can present like they have autism when they don't, just because they haven't been exposed to some of these strategies that you're going to expose them to. So as you move forward, just know that this is a thing. And if you have a kid on your caseload and you're thinking, I swear this kid has autism, just make sure that it's not a deficit in theory of mind, and that's the big problem here. Gender impacts theory of mind development. What do you think? Are girls or boys better at theory of mind? Girls. So there's a major debate here on whether it's nature or nurture. I think it's both. I think that we give the girls the baby dolls and we give the boys the trucks, but I think the girls also want the baby dolls and the boys want the trucks. And you know, every kid is completely different. There's a continuum here. My son loves taking care of baby dolls. He was born in the pandemic in Chicago, and his first big toy was at the American Girl doll store so he could have a friend. My son is a highly empathetic kiddo. This is what I do. So I feel like there is nature and nurture going on at play here. Regardless of why it's happening, what we're seeing is that boys score lower on theory of mind assessments than girls do typically. It's not across the board, but as we go through these, I want you guys to start thinking about the kids that you work with at school. Maybe think of 2 or 3 right now and start to categorize them. Okay, this kid has a diagnosis of hearing loss. This kid might have ADD, or they might have autism. It's a boy. Okay, that all your red flags should be going up. This is like the red flag section. Who should you pay attention to in your class? So this is from the research. We observe a clear effect of gender and theory of mind performance, with girls performing significantly better than boys in all tasks. Family size makes a difference. What do you think? Only children or more siblings? More siblings, yes. Children that come from larger families develop false belief understanding. False belief is, we haven't talked about it yet, but it is theory of mind. They develop it sooner. Perhaps this is because they have more experience of tricks, jokes, and teasing among siblings, or perhaps because they're more exposed to talk about thoughts and wants as parents try to settle disputes among children. So the impact is greater if you have kids that are closer in age. It goes down as kids are more spread out. If you have like a 10-year age gap, it doesn't really help very much. So if you've got an only child, boy, with hearing loss and ADHD on your caseload, your red flags are up. I'm not saying that he has a deficit, I'm saying that he's worth looking at. Bilingualism, good or bad? I'm getting some mixed opinions here. It's good. It's really, really, really good for kids with, in terms of theory of mind. And when I say bilingualism, I'm putting sign language in there. Any way of expressing the same word in 2 different ways takes cognitive flexibility. You have to know, I talk to this person with this language, I talk to this person with this language. The contents of this person's brain are similar but different, and I need to code switch between them. So they're finding that children, also kids that are bilingual, tend to have higher executive functioning and inhibition control than kids that are just learning one language. They have to pause and say, okay, this is dad, I'm gonna use Spanish. This is so-and-so, I'm gonna try this word. So what we're finding is that bilingualism is great. We can encourage it with kids with hearing loss across the board. We can also encourage it because it develops theory of mind. There's a great resource that one of my friends put together. It's called Dual Language Learning for Children with Hearing Loss. And it basically gives all the data and research and the argument for presenting kids with 2 languages. I've got a question. I'm gonna come over here, and after you ask it, I'll repeat it too.
So I was just wondering about codas, because I know we're talking about children with hearing loss, and you had mentioned, like, you know, if a parent is fluent in sign and then the kids would ideally be bilingual, just sign language and English. So would you lump all those kids in with your, bilingual kids if they have a strong, sign language foundation, a strong English, maybe their English isn't as strong, but when they go to school. So, I've worked with kids that were CODAs and that did not have a good English strength. They had a good sign language strength, being both parents were deaf. So I just wondered if you consider that at all with your kids and your studies and things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, having sign language is absolutely beneficial for them to go back and forth, and they don't have to be fluent, like native level fluency in both languages. Even just starting with a 2-year-old and saying, this is manzana, this is apple, this is thank you, and I can say thank you. It just requires cognitive flexibility. It's putting them online at an early age that what's going on in my head might not be what's going on in their head, if that makes sense. So bilingualism is good, and I think that's very exciting. Socioeconomic status can impact theory of mind development. There's a lot of research that shows that children from homes that are less affluent have lower scores on theory of mind. It's not because rubbing money on your body makes you more socially acceptable. They are exposed to more print resources, more vacation opportunities to get outside of themselves, see people, different cultures, have more different experiences. They're exposed to more after-school things. A lot of times their parents are using more descriptive words about thoughts and feelings. There's a different disciplinary strategy often associated, but this is not always the case. I worked here on the south side of Chicago for years, and I cannot tell you how much I learned about being a good mom from watching some of these really low-income parents. So socioeconomic status puts these kids at a disadvantage for a lot of reasons. The Hart and Risley study and the 30 million words projects have looked at a lot of that. If you're at a deficit of 30 million words, some of those are going to be words about thoughts and feelings, but it doesn't have to be the case. And I think this is one of those things where we can't give parents a higher paycheck, but we can give them tools, and we can fill in the gap. So this looks at a quote: individual differences in children's understanding of false belief and emotion were associated with differences in parental occupational classes and mother's education. So yeah, if you've got a kid that's low income, ADD, he's a boy, he's got hearing loss, doesn't have any siblings, you're really looking at a big possibility of a deficit at that point. Language level in general is associated with theory of mind development just across the board. Kids with lower language tend to do poorer on theory of mind, and that's for a number of reasons. One of them is mental state words about thoughts and feelings. If you have lower language in general, then you don't know as many words like perplexed. You might know confused but not perplexed. You might know scared but not terrified. So just vocabulary has an impact, and then I'm going to expose you guys to a new one, especially for my middle school kids and elementary school kids. This is interesting. Complement clauses impacts theory of mind development. So what is a complement clause? It comes after one of these mental state words. He thought that she would come home tonight. The complement clause is that she came home tonight. We don't usually say, I worried. You usually worried about something. And so there's something at the end of these mental state words. And for kids that have trouble retaining a lot of words all at once, their auditory memory is poor, or they have ADHD and they're not really paying attention, it can be hard to learn complement clauses. Here's another one. She doesn't know whether the ball is in the box or the cupboard, and thought the puzzle was on the couch. So we'll talk a lot more about mental state words, but if research has shown that just teaching complement clauses, just the syntax of it, improves theory of mind outcomes on assessments. And they looked at kids that had been explicitly taught complement clauses, kids that had not tested theory of mind, tested theory of mind. Just working on that syntax helped. And I'll just give you kind of an off-the-cuff example. Like if I say, I was so worried about getting here on time because I knew that the traffic could be bad on the Dan Ryan, but then I felt really relieved when I was here early and I got to have a coffee. That's a lot of complement clauses in there. You really have to be able to listen to and retain what comes after the verb. And so kids are starting to do that, like around 3. She thought it was under the table. What did she think? It was under the table. So this is what the study says. It's very cut and dry. Learning sequential complement clauses does contribute to the development of theory of mind. And the last one is parent input. Parenting style and disciplinary strategy really do impact theory of mind development. So if you have a parent that explains what they're thinking, they use a lot of flowery language, they talk about other people's thoughts and wants and feelings, they explain what happened when there were miscommunications. Those kinds of parents raise kids that have better theory of mind. And then conflict resolution strategies also impact theory of mind. So what this study found is that children whose parents explain and discuss instead of only punishing score higher on false belief or theory of mind tasks. So that would look like, a kid makes a really bad choice, he pushes a friend down or he takes a toy away, and the parent just says, go to your room. That's not gonna go as far as, wow, I wonder how Billy felt when you did that. You're invited to a play date with him tomorrow. I'm not sure that he's gonna wanna play with you. Would you wanna play with you tomorrow if you did that? That kind of discipline, I'm not saying don't put him in timeout, that's everybody's deal, but at the very least, explain why it was not the right thing to do, the impact that it had on somebody else, and then I love a plan for next time, or even a role play. Let's try that again. I'll be Billy, you be you. What's another thing that you could have said? My new strategy with my kids is you have so many good words, but you used your hands. Why don't we use words instead? I want to hear those good words that you have. All right, so those are things that can impact theory of mind development. It's not exhaustive, but that's what most of the research says. Does anybody have any questions, or does anybody want to add something to that list that they've noticed? Like, I think this impacts theory of mind development as well. It can't have nothing to do with politics. Okay, no questions? All right, well, we're gonna move forward and look at specifically kids with hearing loss and kids with vision loss. Again, my background is hearing loss. This presentation was adapted to look at children with vision loss. If you have something that you feel like from the vision loss perspective you want to contribute so that I can learn and we can learn together, let me know. But it is a little bit heavier on hearing loss. All right, so we're going to start with the research. There are, I think I've got maybe 5 or 6 quotes in a row on kids with hearing loss. These, I think, were just really powerful statements as I was doing a deep dive. We find that, you know what, this is starting off with children with vision loss. Let me start here. This is a new field for me, and so I'm still learning about children with vision loss and theory of mind. We find that blind children in this age range, it was looking at 4 to 17, show slightly lower theory of mind behavioral performance relative to sighted children. Likewise, the functional profile of theory of mind brain regions is qualitatively similar, but quantitatively weaker in blind relative to sighted children. Alongside prior research, these data suggest that vision facilitates, but is not necessary for theory of mind development. And to some extent, I would say that that's similar for children with hearing loss. Hearing facilitates, but it's not necessary for theory of mind development. But from the little bit of research that I did, it does seem like children with hearing loss are at more risk for theory of mind deficits than children with vision loss. All right, let's look at some children with hearing loss quotes. The reading abilities of students who are deaf and hard of hearing with and without cochlear implants cannot be explained by their hearing levels, phonological processing skills, and measured language skills alone. So this is saying, this is a kid that looks great, right? They have great access to sound, they have a really great vocabulary, their syntax is great, and they're bombing content questions in reading. What is going on? Why don't the other kids like them? What is happening here? And so we're seeing that they are still having a deficit. Deaf children typically experience limitations in their language proficiencies and the social experiences that influence theory of mind acquisition. And again, these are not the 5% of deaf children that are born to deaf parents that have native level sign language, okay? Children with hearing loss can have trouble developing theory of mind at the same pace as their hearing friends. Children and adolescents with prelingual severe to profound hearing loss more often experience social difficulties than normal hearing peers. Deaf children were delayed substantially behind hearing children in understanding pretending, false belief, and other theory of mind concepts. Even though children in this current study were implanted at a considerably earlier age with a cochlear implant than children in previous studies, their theory of mind was still impacted. So we're finding that even if kids are getting bilateral cochlear implants at 10 months old, and they've got great language, maybe they're bilingual, they're signing and they're talking, we're still seeing a deficit in theory of mind. And so that's kind of why I feel like we can't just sit back and say, hopefully this will develop. We need to step in and fill in the gaps. These kids deserve intervention. And that's what's really cool, is that this isn't always the case. I'm sure you guys can think about people with hearing loss that have incredible theory of mind, and it doesn't have to be the case. These kids might be going down a path where they're struggling right now, and we can change the direction. It does not have to be that way for them. All right, so we are going to take a minute and break out into some small groups. You can do like 2 to 4, and we're gonna brainstorm some of the reasons why children with hearing and or vision loss might be at risk for a deficit in theory of mind. And then as you come out with these reasons, I want you to think through whether these things are things that we can change, or would these respond to intervention? Do we have a hand on being able to change any of them? Okay, so let's take about 5 minutes, and then please plan at least a few of you to share out. Thank you. We'll wrap up our conversations. I'm gonna grab the microphone. Would anyone like to volunteer a reason why children with hearing loss might struggle? Yes, or did you have a question? I do have a different question. Okay.
I am with ISRC. We are picking up a lot more of the deaf blind.
Okay.
What, kiddos, how do we do that? Like, how do we teach theory of mind with parents with deaf blind? Because right now the families that I'm working with are more focused on accessibility, language, those kind of things, and I'm trying to get any ideas?
Yeah, so the question is that ISRC is seeing more children that are deaf and blind, and how do we work with them? It's a great question. I mean, it adds a whole new layer of complexity to the situation. In almost every instance, my best recommendation is to be explicit, to really be explaining and over-explaining what happened, who thought what, and why, and to see misunderstandings and times where there's conflict every single time as an opportunity. Because these kids that have multiple avenues being restricted need so many more opportunities to get the language and to have it explained so that it starts to make sense, if that makes sense. Yeah. All right, what about children with hearing and vision loss? Why are they having these deficits? Why are we here today? What's causing this? Any ideas? hold on. Yeah, I'll move here and then there and then there. Okay.
You're just talking about parents and how the parents don't know that disability and don't know how to help their kids, and there's a fear with the parents or protecting kind of ability with the parents, and they don't want to let their kids experience it.
Yeah, so she said that part of it is with parents, caregivers. They're protecting their kids. They don't want their kids to experience these things, and I absolutely agree. I don't have it here, but I have a great video of a mom that I worked with for years who explains why she treats her child with hearing loss different than her typically hearing kid. And it's impacting her theory of mind. Yeah, parenting style does make a difference. Okay, I had one back here. Remind me. Yeah, okay. You might have to hold them closer than you're comfortable with.
That's fine. Okay. So we're on behalf of like vision loss and why they may be at risk for theory of mind. And we came up with, they can't see facial expressions, so it's hard to see what attitude someone's feeling. They're missing social cues, such as like waving or gestures, hand gestures. They're also lacking incidental learning, such as like social interactions, natural occurring learning, such as like copying others in a room if they were asked. They don't know what those around them in the room are doing unless explicitly told. And they don't know how to, sometimes they might not know how to identify more complex emotions than happy and sad, because facial expressions are more complex. And, you know, our suggestion was just to use more descriptive language and for those with visual impairments.
That's great, and you brought up one that you applied to visual impairments, but that really applies to children with hearing loss, the incidental learning. Being able to overhear and oversee what's going on is huge. We learn so much every day that way. Yes, coming over here. Can you hold it really close?
Yes. Sorry. I think one reason is that we know that our students learn very concretely, right? And we cater to that because we know that's how they learn. But at the same time, we don't directly focus on thinking flexibly. And we don't practice that skill. And then our students really struggle with that. I'm an SLP, and I realized my students couldn't visualize. If I said something and I told them to close their eyes and make a picture, they couldn't do it because I'm always showing them a picture of what I'm talking about. I'm always supporting them visually. And I realized, whoa, we never practiced this skill. So it's kind of that. Not that we're doing anything wrong, we need to provide those supports, but also we need to start including practicing, thinking flexibly, being able to visualize.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah, adding some more abstract into the daily routine. I love that. Did everybody hear that okay? Okay. Yes, I'm coming over with the microphone.
All right, so I think one of the things also I don't think that we think about enough is the understanding of people who, like other peers, kind of like their interactions or their kind of fear of whether it's students with vision loss or individuals who have hearing loss. And so with that understanding, they tend to be isolated from their peers.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah, people can kind of be isolated. Do you mind if I share the story that you told me at the restaurant?
Sure.
You can say no.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. While we were on the break, he shared with me that a server has asked the people next to him what he would want to eat. Yeah. These kids can feel left out and different, and he was like, I can order for myself, I'm an adult. Yeah, I think that these kids can be talked around and talked over and excluded, and that is limiting their opportunity to interact socially, for sure. All right, oh, back here, hold on. I'm coming to you, getting my steps in.
Did you say that there was the thought of why even the kids getting them at 10 months of cochlears and still having those delays, it's just theories or what we're thinking about? Because that's something we were talking about, and I was saying how the only thing I can think of is because we always connect it to language.
Yeah,
sorry.
Do you
We
mind?
always,
We
I
start
can
the
hold
whole thing
it.
over.
Sorry. I was trying to figure out what she was talking about with like the deaf kids that are getting those cochlears so early, and how like just having been doing this so long, we always really, really focus on that language deprivation and how that impacts, as I'm the social worker, and so I'm always thinking about that. And so now when you're saying that the theory of mind is still so, we're still seeing the delays so much even with those kids, and Sherry and I were talking about it, and I'm like, well, what is it? Is it that, because I think we underestimate how tiring it is for someone, whether they have cochlear implants or they're just relying on the sign language or whatever, to be able to take in what's going on around them and trying to figure out that language. And so are they missing those social cues because they're focusing so much on actually the language that's, coming out, and not sort of seeing everything that goes with it? I mean, is there anything out there saying that? I'm curious.
So the question is, why these kids that are getting implanted, they might have Connexin 26, they get implanted at 10 months old, they hear 20 decibels, why are they still having a deficit? And I agree with you. I think part of it is just workload. Listening with a cochlear implant can be exhausting. And so part of their energy is spent just getting what's said instead of what's not being said, the subtle cues, reading between the lines. But I really think a lot of it is incidental learning and overhearing. And let me talk about a little bit of that. So the first factor that I hear in the research over and over is language delay, just a language delay period. And I think this makes common sense. If a child has a language delay, then they're going to be lacking, and there's complement clauses, there's mental state words. But what's causing their language delay? It can be their age of identification, if they're fit with appropriate amplification, if their audiologist is doing a good job programming them, because I will tell you, they don't all do a good job programming. They're not appropriately programmed. And their therapy. Maybe they don't have you as a therapist, and they have a subpar therapist that isn't inputting this kind of information, and they overall have a language delay. That by itself causes a deficit in theory of mind. Here's a quote: performance on theory of mind tasks in deaf children is delayed by their reduced access to language. This, to me, is the biggest reason, the listening bubble, and to some extent, a visual bubble. Are you not able to see more than 5 feet ahead of you? Can you not see anything? And so if you do not have access to overhearing or overseeing what somebody is doing, then you're missing out on a lot. I think that we underestimate, hearing adults underestimate how much we learned indirectly. It's a lot. I mean, how many times have kids come out with a word where you're like, I did not teach you that? They are learning indirectly through overhearing all day long. And if they have a limited listening bubble, if their hearing aid or cochlear implant doesn't allow great sound quality past 5 or 10 feet, then they're missing what's going on across the room. And kids with typical hearing are getting that. Even if they're playing with blocks, even if they're on the computer in the library, they're still hearing it. They're processing what's going on. And these kids are missing out on that. To me, that's one of the biggest things. Here's an example of a little kid. She might not know what's going on, but she's missing all of these pink mental state words, or she's getting all of these pink mental state words just sitting in close proximity to her mom. Shouldn't be worried, changed my mind, thought you knew, excited to share, what do you think? These are all pennies going into her penny bank on mental state words, so that maybe she doesn't know them right now, but she's gonna learn them through experience and exposure over and over and over again. Nobody is sitting in front of her saying, today you're gonna learn about think. I'm gonna teach you think. I think. That's not, she's just learning it like this. And if dad, I want you to imagine, like, dad comes home from work, mom and the child are playing on the floor, and dad seems frustrated. Mom walks over and talks about traffic. Super boring situation. I'm so frustrated. There was traffic again today. If they don't fix that construction, I'm going to quit my job, but my boss will be furious with me. That kid is hearing all of that if they have typical hearing. But for a kid with hearing loss, that might be outside of their listening bubble. So he might go over to his dad and say something like, push me on the swing. Maybe not the right time and place. You know, being able to pick up on what's going on with other people just in the back of your mind through overhearing can really impact social relationships. And so I think that one of the best things that we can do, I like this picture of incidental learning. This little girl in the corner is my incidental learner. She's listening to their conversation. I think one of the best things that we can do is coach parents to have those conversations closer to their child with hearing loss. I'm not saying to talk about divorce and four-letter words in front of them, but if you're frustrated about the traffic, if you're really looking forward to somebody's wedding coming up, just something that would be a conversation you would have with an adult that you might not present to a child, have the conversation closer to them. If it's okay for them to hear it, let them hear it. Because their listening bubbles can be very confining for them. As teachers, you can set up opportunities for this. This is very cute when teachers do this. Coordinate with another teacher and have them come in and share something frustrating in proximity of the kids. And then when they leave, you can turn around and go, oh, were you listening to me? Did you hear how frustrated I am that the bulletin board paper's not being delivered on time? I am so disappointed. I can tell you guys were listening. Just letting them know what those mental state words are, that they can have opportunities to be participating in overhearing, I think can be helpful. All right, so here's another factor specific to kids who are deaf and hard of hearing. This is what we mentioned over here. They are getting reduced input over here, yeah. We, as parents and therapists, are across the board inputting words that are more concrete. This is a zebra. We're not inputting words that are abstract. She is befuddled. We don't think that those are academic ready words, and they are. They need to be input so many more times than rectangle in order for kids to get their head around it, because it's meta language. You can hold up a zebra and say that's a zebra, and then they can see it a million other times in books and get it every time. But if you say perplexed, they need to hear it in different contexts 50 more times before they're ready to try it out on their own. So these words are not being input. Another reason is caregiver grief. These caregivers, in general, are not expecting to have a child with hearing loss. Some of them have an idea that it's coming. I'm a carrier of Connexin 26. I was ready for it. My kids are typically hearing, but most people don't know that it's coming. And I want you to think of a time that you had to process a little bit of grief. Were you very chatty and exuberant, labeling everybody's mental states? You might have been a little bit quiet. So a lot of times these kids are born into a situation where their parent doesn't know what they're hearing. So they're like, well, I'm just not going to talk to them anyway. They are feeling maybe a little sad themselves, so they might not be chatty. And while you cannot speed up anybody's process of acceptance, your kid's going to be amazing. Your kid's going to do awesome. This is not going to hold them back. We can still cheer them on, and we can say, listen, this is your process, your grief. There are parents that don't have to go through this process at all. There are parents that go through this process for their entire life. But if they are going through any form of grief, it can restrict what they put into their kids and the words that they're using. I've gotten pushback on this before. There's a whole blog post out there about me presenting this slide. So I understand that this one is pretty sensitive. I love desperately and deeply children with hearing loss. I was ready for it with my own kids. That is just not always the case with every parent. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with these kids. I'm saying that some parents are surprised and they need a minute, and that minute can impact the language that they're putting into their kids. And so the research supports it. Mothers of hearing children used far more cognitive mental state language with their infants, and their conversations were characterized by more communicative, effective turn-taking than mothers of deaf children. They're just using fewer of these words. And as an aside, there's a family that I worked with here in Chicago for a long time. They had a child with hearing loss and a child with typical hearing, and she and I became really good friends. And I finally just asked her one day, I was like, why do you use higher level language and more mental state words with your younger son than your older daughter? She's like, I just want to make it easier for her. She already has it hard. I want to say, go get it. It's under the table. Not, hey, could you hand me that? I tossed it under the table and I need it back. And so my encouragement to her was to raise the bar. That's really what we can do for these kids, is encourage these caregivers, raise the bar. They can do it. They can understand befuddled. And if they're going to take the SAT, they need to understand that word. Here's another quote. Communication between deaf infants and hearing parents can be significantly impoverished. These are deaf infants. They're talking to them differently. A number of researchers have drawn attention to the emotional frustration hearing parents face upon confirmation of their child's deafness. This may depress parents' motivation to converse with their child and selectively impair communication about unobservable thoughts and feelings. I mean, I can't say it better than that. We can come in and say, hey, talk to your deaf child about what their child is thinking and feeling. We need these abstract mental state words. They're gonna get zebra. They're gonna know giraffe. Let's work on these things that they have to hear 5,000 times in order to understand it, and it's critical for social development and academic success. But the good news is that, yay, intervention can impact child outcomes. That's why we're here. This is exciting. I mean, some of this is sobering, but it's also really exciting. We can change these kids' lives. All right, so I'm gonna pause. Before somebody else writes a really mean blog post about me, does anybody have any questions or concerns, or just things that they want to share, something that's bubbling up right now? I'm happy to pass the mic around. Okay. Hold both mics close to your mouth.
Something that came up in mind for me, I'm an interpreter in an elementary school, so we're working with kids that are 3 to 7 years old. You were talking about the bubble, the auditory bubble. The environments that I end up in are, a gym class that has 90 students with 4 kids that they just direct through a microphone and have music going endlessly. So sometimes it's the extra auditory that's so loud that then when you're close to them, they still can't even decipher what's going on. So, we try to be right there. We try to staff enough interpreters, but if they're playing rock, paper, scissors tournament in 3 different corners, it's like that's still something that impacts. They're still trying to learn how to use their cochlears, their hearing aids, whatever they have. So just kind of a general comment that I thought of with that slide.
Was everyone able to hear that okay? Do you want me to repeat? She was saying that, even when we're trying our best at allowing kids to have an interpreter, to be able to see things visually, to not miss anything, we're still in these situations where listening is hard. You're in a gym with reverberation, there's 90 other kids, there's sneakers squeaking. It is still hard. And I think ultimately that does answer our question. Why are these kids still having trouble? Because we can't control everything for them. As much as we try, we can't control everything. And that's why we have as much intervention as we can so that the child has experience reading facial cues if they didn't hear what's going on, has experience advocating for themselves. Hey, tell me one more time. Can you tell me what the punchline was? Because they need extra in order to just function at the basic level. Okay, it's 11:35. We're gonna break for lunch at 12:15, right? Oh, we have another question? Yes, okay, I'm gonna come over. Hold on just a second. Hold. No, we're not breaking yet. Okay. You're not. I am.
I'm just curious about working memory, right? Because a lot of our deaf and hard of hearing students have poor working memories, and that's an issue. And so I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about how working memory affects theory of mind.
That's a great question and really insightful. I used to have a whole slide on it, but I took it out because this really wanted to have a lot more time for literacy. But you bring up such a good point. These kids are struggling with working memory, with auditory memory. Working on auditory memory, remembering 3-4 critical elements, does improve theory of mind. I'm going to give you an example. See if you can follow me here. Betty and Tim used to be dating, but they're not dating anymore. But Tim invited Betty to prom, and she said no because Alex had already invited her. Meanwhile, Sandra's watching the whole thing, and she really wishes that Tim had invited her to prom. So she went to her friend Alex and asked Alex to ask Tim to invite her to prom, but Tim said no, he's already going with Betty. I mean, I'm totally lost, but they're hearing this all day long, these middle schoolers. I guess that's high school if it's prom. They have to follow so much social drama on who thought, who said what, constantly. And that takes working memory. And it starts with put the dog and the pig in the bathtub. They have to be able to do that. Because if they just put the pig in the bathtub and they forget the dog, the next step up is their kindergarten teacher saying, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, put your purple book under your desk, grab your jacket, and line up at the door. They're just lining up at the door. And we have to be able to work on this so that when they get to the prom conversation, they're able to go, okay, it was Tim that didn't invite Betty, right? There's a lot to remember there. And so auditory memory and working memory definitely plays a role here. And it's another reason why ADD and ADHD have a deficit, because they're thinking squirrel, right? I mean, you have to be able to attend. And so they might be doing different things for different reasons, but the outcome is still bombing a theory of mind assessment. And so just like when I said working on complement clauses might not feel like working on theory of mind, but it is. Working on auditory memory is working on theory of mind. You can do this in classes where you have somebody do like an about me, where they stand up and they share 5 things about themselves, and then you say, who can remember the most? Write down the 5 things. That is great social skills. That is what I needed growing up. I mean, I probably do have ADHD because my mom does, and I would remember the last thing that somebody said, and then I would see them again, and I wouldn't ask them how their trip to Bolivia was, because I forgot. And then the friend next to me would say, how was your trip to Bolivia? And I'd go, oh, I totally forgot. I missed that opportunity to make a connection and remember something important about you. You know, I mean, I really think that those are some of the things that build friendships, and you guys can set up opportunities for kids to remember information about their friends. Hey, do you remember what their favorite color was? Where did they go on vacation over the summer? What kind of dog do they have? I think that those are really, really great life skills that any kid would benefit from. Okay, you guys ready for literacy? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and launch in. Here's how we're starting this. I want you to write down your top 5 books. It can be a variety of kids' books, elementary school books, adult books. You can just do kids' picture books, really whatever you want. It needs to be a book, and that's the only requirement. So we're gonna write down our top 5, and then we're gonna go throughout the next few hours thinking about them differently, and then we'll kind of reconvene about your top 5 at the end of the workshop and kind of see how you labeled it, what kind of book it is. All right, so take maybe 2 minutes to write down 5 great books. I've got a few more writers. Okay. Keep your list. This is your personal list. You don't have to do anything with it, but think about these books as we're talking about categorizing theory of mind books. I am going to focus today mostly on children's picture books, but these are principles that can be applied to anything any kind of book. You can apply it to adult books as well. So we're going to start with some quotes from the research. We haven't looked at this one yet. On average, median scores of 17-year-old students who are deaf and hard of hearing on the SAT have been at the 4th grade level and have not improved significantly in more than 40 years, despite significant changes in deaf education. And if you take a look at that year, it's 2012, and that seems like forever ago, but that was post multi-channel cochlear implants. A lot of you guys were practicing and doing a great job practicing. These kids had probably pretty good syntax, pretty good access to sound, pretty good vocabulary, and they're still bombing the SAT. I think part of that is an inability to answer content questions that are looking at things like inferencing, false belief, theory of mind concepts. I truly believe that, yes, they're not all going to get 1600s if you teach them false belief, but they'll get more right if they start to have more experience working on false belief and theory of mind in books. And I know you're all going, what is false belief? I'm going to get there. Reading abilities of students who are deaf and hard of hearing without cochlear implants, with and without cochlear implants, cannot be explained by their hearing levels, phonological processing skills, and measured language alone. That's a quote we have already looked at. I'm bringing it back since this is the literacy section. Even students who are deaf and hard of hearing with adequate word recognition skills are likely to have difficulty analyzing the syntactic relations among words in the sentence. They know every word in the paragraph. They got the answer wrong. Why? Why is that happening? All right, I'm going to show you a passage from Harry Potter. I think this is 5th grade level. You ready? Indeed, from the tone of his voice when he next spoke, Harry was quite sure that Mr. Weasley thought Dudley was quite as mad as the Dursleys thought he was, except that Mr. Weasley felt sympathy rather than fear. I mean, that's why. That's the load that they're having to remember. And if they're hearing their friends have that prom conversation or conversations like this, you really, to be able to say, okay, the content question is, how did Mr. Weasley feel about somebody? You got to go back and reread it a few times and really process it. This is a lot of mental state words. Sympathy, fear, thought, quite as mad, quite sure. That's a lot of abstract right there. And the kid probably knows all those words and still might not get that answer right. So that's why we're working on this. This is our roadmap for today. We're going to look at theory of mind and literacy from the perspective of mental state words, perspective taking, making predictions, false belief, inference, and hidden emotion. And so what my goal is for you guys is to be able to look at your list of books, your top 5, and situate them in here. Do they have perspective taking, inferencing, false belief, hidden emotions, mental state words? And I want you guys to be able to categorize all the books in your own library quickly, kind of by the end of this workshop. If you go to the library and you pull a new book off the shelf, this is what I do. We go pick out 20, 25 books from the library every couple of weeks, and I've never read them before. I open them up, I read them with my kids every night. We do 3 books, and in the back of my mind, I'll go, false belief, inferencing, this one's a dud, mental state words, this one's a dud, but I can change it and make it good. And I just mentally categorize everything. And if you get into the habit of doing that, then you'll be able to start to identify A, where your kid is functioning on this continuum, and B, how to get them up to that next level to keep them in that zone of proximal development. Okay, they can do this, but they really need to be starting to do this, and I can use books to target it. Good? Okay. All right, so we're going to start with mental state words. We've been talking about them throughout the workshop. Can anybody just shout out, and I'll speak it into here, shout out what a mental state word is. A mental state word is what? Yeah, wondering, thinking. Yeah. Are they concrete or are they abstract? Yeah, they're abstract, they're not concrete. So they're abstract, they're words about thoughts and feelings, so cognitive and affective, and they describe somebody's mental state. This is just kind of a brief word list of some mental state words. These kids come up with new mental state words all the time. I don't know what skibbity toilet means, but it feels, I don't know, something's bad about it. Ohio, that might be a bad mental state. They've got their own language right now, but these are normal human mental state words, and they can be as casual as bummer. I'm bummed. You know, really anything that describes how somebody is thinking and feeling is a mental state word. So are these words easy or difficult to teach? Yeah, they're a lot more difficult. Does anyone here use the MacArthur-Bates in order to track vocabulary development? Anybody? MacArthur-Bates is something that you would use from like 0 to 4, and it's just a whole vocabulary list. It breaks it up into animals, family member names, rooms in the house, just like basic vocabulary. But it's like maybe, it might be like birth to 6 years old. It has 5 mental state words on it out of hundreds of words. These are not considered academic ready words. And so it's a standardized assessment tool, but my suggestion is to staple a mental state word list to it, just so you're remembering, okay, we're not just working on farm animals. We need to be working on these mental states as well. So let's look at this quote. Compared with hearing students who are deaf and hard of hearing produce narratives that are less complete, focus more on descriptions than relationships, and have fewer mental state and evaluative words. So these are the stories. Literacy is about reading, right? But it's also about the stories that these kids are creating. And when they're creating stories, they're using fewer of these mental state words, and they're writing what actually happened. I went to the movies, I got popcorn, I saw the movie, I went home. Where kids that have typical hearing are including more mental state words. I was so excited to get the popcorn, but I was disappointed when they didn't have my favorite sippy cup character at the theater. The movie was hysterical. I was laughing so hard. When we went home, Mom surprised me. I got to get some ice cream. I was excited about today. That's how they're telling the stories. And that is part of how I got into working on theory of mind. When I was in graduate school, I was able to be a part of this big longitudinal study called Outcomes of Children with Hearing Loss. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's, yeah, you've heard of it. It's this big study, very long-term, of kids with hearing loss with multiple universities. So it has University of Iowa, UNC Chapel Hill, a couple of other schools. And my job as a grad student was to read narratives that had been written about a story and circle the mental state words. And that's what I did. There's technology for that now, but I just sat down and circled, thought, wondered, liked, knew. And by the time I was done doing this task, I did maybe a couple hundred of these, I could tell if the kid had hearing loss or not, just by reading the narrative. It was a story about 2 girls that stole candy and their feelings about it and deciding to return it. But a child with hearing loss more often would say they went to this store, they took the candy, they went home, they woke up, they took the candy back. And they wouldn't say they decided to steal the candy and wondered if the shop clerk saw them. They went home and felt guilty. They wondered if the police officer, they decided to bring it back. They left out a lot of those words. So if you're working with these elementary schoolers, middle schoolers, these are great words for them to include. A large body of research has shown that the extent to which caregivers attend to and discuss mental states has an impact on theory of mind development. Caregivers that use more of these words have kids with stronger theory of mind down the road. Mothers' use of mental state utterances at early time points was consistently correlated with later theory of mind understanding. There's a lot of studies on this. And this is not just kids with hearing loss, kids with vision loss. Just parents that use mental state words have kids with stronger theory of mind. Frequent conversations in the home about mental processes enable children to succeed on theory of mind tasks. All right, so we're going to play a little game, and I'm sure that you guys will be able to figure out where I'm going with this, but it's still kind of a fun a fun demonstration. Can I get one volunteer? And if I don't get a volunteer, can you volunteer your friends? Okay, come on up. Thank you. Okay, we're going to play a quick round of adapted taboo. I'm going to show you a word, and you can do anything to describe it without using or signing the word, okay? Yeah, you can tell I've had experience with that one before, right? Okay, come over here so nobody else sees it.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
All right. It's a food. You eat it. It's a fruit.
Apple.
It's yellow.
Yay, how fast was that? Just like a couple seconds, okay? You can go sit down. I need another volunteer. I know, it's always good to be the easy one. Anybody? You can do it, yay! Oh wait, why don't you use this too?
I thought, I wondered, I considered, tried to figure out what you might be thinking.
That would be good.
Mental state words.
All of those things.
Emotion, point of view.
It's kind of a theatrical word. If I act this way and then you act this way, and you did it because
Reaction. Influence. Mimic. Persuasion.
it begins with mimic.
Oh.
You still didn't get it, so how am I out? Closer. Closer. Close to mirroring, sort of.
I think we were closer when it was like thought and wondered.
Well, then when I went down the theater route, thinking maybe they would get it with that way.
Do you see what I mean? This is hard, right? Do you guys give up?
I give up.
Okay, you can give up. The word is mused. Mused. Yeah. You guys know that word? Mental state words are hard. You have to use other words to explain them, and you have to have more and more experience with them. Why would you say I'm mused instead of I thought? Maybe you're feeling theatrical. That was a great clue. Okay, but it's for that time when you're a little extra, right? These kids need exposure to these words over and over and over again in order to know when to use it, why to use it, what its synonyms are. I always like doing this because I do think that it very clearly explains why these academic ready words they're very important, but you can usually get them pretty quickly. And these mental state words need a lot more attention than we're giving them. So why are they difficult for kids with hearing loss? They're abstract. You can't hold up mused. You can hold up a banana. Once you see a banana once, you've got it. Once you've heard mused once, you don't got it. You need it a few more times. Parent input, we already discussed this. Parents are saying banana 5,000 times more than they're saying mused. They don't really need to. Incidental learning, a lot of these higher level mental state words are learned by overhearing people talking, adults, older friends. They've got this listening bubble around them, and so they're missing words unless somebody's coming up to them and saying, I was musing the other day that we should go to the park soon, then they might be missing it. And then just a general language delay, having access to fewer words overall. So what can we do? We can deliberately input mental state words. And so this is really for the younger kids. This is starting out at the very bottom. We are going to read them books that have mental state words in them. And for the books that don't have mental state words in them, you can add them in really easily. So let's look at this Llama Llama book. He's got a feeling, he misses mama, that's emotional, he's sad, don't stop there. So we can talk about how cow looks, ooh, he looks concerned about his friend, and giraffe seems worried. She might want to give him some snack, and sheep over here is just annoyed because he cries every day at snack. And so this is a great opportunity to talk about the character, how the character feels, also talk about how the other characters feel. If you've got a book that doesn't have mental state words, you can put it in. You can put it in anywhere. So look at your list of 5, especially if you've got some of these younger kids' books, and think through some of the language in them. Does one of your books have mental state words in it? If you've got something on there like The Great Gatsby, then yes, you know it's got mental state words in there. But if you, especially like with some of these younger books, if you've got Where's Spot or something, think through the words that they're using. Do they have mental state words? Rainbow fish is great. Pleased and happy. As I read books right now, these things just pop out at me, one after another after another. This is a mental state word. This is a mental state word. Giraffes can't dance is a great one. I love this line. He never felt so sad before, so sad and so alone. Words that go together. Have you ever felt sad and alone before? He feels both of those things at the same time. So yeah, really looking for mental state words. And what they found too, this was a very cool study, is that mothers that used want, just the word want, in multiple contexts, oh, you want to go to the park, you want some apples, you want to go to bed, experienced a significantly larger gain in overall mental state terms over a 6-month period. And so if any of you guys, does anybody work with littles, like 6 to 18 months? Couple people, yeah. If you've got these littles or a child that's older, but maybe they were late identified, they just got a cochlear implant, want is the baseline, because it is a human, you have to have your needs met. You have to want things. You want food, shelter, sleep. And so as soon as a baby's born, they have things that they want, and we can label it. So even if they're waiting for an implant, be signing want. They really need to start understanding desires for you, and then you can bump it up to desires for other people. You want this, but I want this. So here's an example. Oh, you're tired of the blue ball. You want the orange one. Here you go. Instead of, here's the orange ball. You're not really changing the thing that you're doing. You're just peppering in mental state words. You don't really have to create a whole new activity. You're just remembering to add mental states. This is a great book for want. I love that they're signing more too. This is Bear Wants More. He wakes up from hibernation, and the book uses bombardment of the word want over and over and over again so that you can have a lot of exposure to it. Bear wants berries, bear wants honey, he wants lots of different things. So it gives kind of repeat exposure, just if you're looking for a book that does want. All right, so I'm gonna show a video clip. It has Sally Tannenbaum in it. Sally was local here. She worked at University of Chicago, if some of you guys know her. She did this therapy session where she coached a mom on using mental state words while reading Where the Wild Things Are. This little guy is in Lincoln Park, and he was 2, and he has bilateral moderate hearing loss and uses hearing aids. And what I want you guys to pay attention to are the words that are used, that the child naturally uses, that the mom naturally uses. And if you were the therapist in that room, instead of Sally, what would you be doing next? Or how would you have coached this mom in the moment to do things a little bit differently?
So we talked last time about using words about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what other people are thinking and feeling. How's that going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We try to pepper it in when we can.
Yeah, so whenever, you can read a book or you can talk about what the animals are thinking, how he's feeling, just to point out all those mental state words, because we talk about grammar and speech and all this language development, and sometimes we forget about talking about feelings, and it will help him be aware of what other people are thinking and what other people are feeling, right? Because we want him to grow up to be a really empathetic guy, right?
Yes.
Deal?
Yay! So he was sent to bed without eating anything. Yeah, what do you think Max is feeling right now? What does he look like? You think he's sad? Do you think he's mad? Yeah, he should get in his bed. That's right, because his mom said, go upstairs. Go to bed. No dinner. He's supposed to... What? Right. It's scary, I know.
I'm getting scared just thinking about it.
Very scared.
Very scared.
The
baby scared?
Oh, from monsters. Do you think he's excited? Yes. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through night and day, and in and out of weeks, and over almost a year to where the wild things are. Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! And when he came, I know. Are you okay? Are you okay? And when, my goodness, I wonder, do you think he's scared? Yeah. Do you think Max is scared? You're scared of the wild things? Yeah, of the monsters? Do you think Max is scared of the monsters? Yeah. I don't know. He looks pretty confident.
What mental state words did you hear? Scared, confident, worried, sad. Which one did you hear the most? Scared. What would you be coaching them to do next? Use a new word. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so much. Would you like to come up and teach? Synonyms. As soon as he said scared, I knew he knows that word. He knows it through and through. We don't need to teach him scared. We don't need to talk about being scared. We need to talk about being afraid or frightened, terrified. We need synonyms. As soon as they have a word, there's another word, because that's how English is. Even if it's not an exact parallel, you can say, or another way to say that is something like this. All right, let's do some of these other words. Worried, anxious, distraught, stressed, nervous, yeah. Happy, joyful, elated, cheery. I don't think I have cheery on my list. I like that. Content, yeah. Confused, befuddled, bewildered, stumped. Oh, that's not on my list either. You guys are great. Yeah, perplexed, tired, weary, exhausted. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to stop with these ones on the left. There's always another one to go off of, and that's why I have this list for you guys. This is my mental state word list. Sherry, did this go out already, the mental state word list? So I put this together from a couple of research articles. This is a compilation of their lists. It is not exhaustive, like Stumped is not on it. That's a great one. This is the emotional state part of it, but there's other parts. There's physical states like hungry, tired, thirsty, and then cognitive states, thought, knew, wondered. And I'm not protective of this at all. So feel free to copy it, print it out. I would ideally love this to be on everyone's fridge everywhere because it's just a constant reminder that we can change the language that we use. We all have vocabulary words that we like to fall back on, and there are other words that we just don't use as often. And so having this on a fridge or in the front of a folder can be a really great reminder to branch out from what's comfortable so that this child is exposed to a wide variety of words, so that when they see it on a reading comprehension test, they can understand it, so they can follow the plot a lot better. All right, so this doesn't have anything to, oh wait, hold on just a second. I've got a question, I'm coming back to you.
Thanks. Not really a question, just a comment about that with the different levels of emotion words. Our school recently put up this huge, like, printed banner with all these emotion words. I don't know, I just typed in emotion wheel and it looks like this. And so it's like sad, and then it branches out to like, you know, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 words where it's just breaks it out. So if you type in emotion wheel, you'll get a visual of it looks like this.
That's like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Seriously. Like it's got it with the tears too.
That is not emotion wheel, but that's how I got the visual to pop up.
That was worth the whole flight by itself. I mean, that's brilliant. It's if you have a chance, you should Google this because it has the base words in the middle of the wheel, and then higher level words, and then the highest level words on the outside of the wheel. And it's color coded based on general feelings. It's great. I mean, it provides synonyms. That's a very, very, very cool resource. Anybody else? Yeah, I'm going to bring this over. Hold on.
Okay, so I have a question. I have a student who was like lately diagnosed as deaf, and one of his goals is want. Like, I want this. Getting him, well, he's fairly comfortable with requesting, like, I want this. So what would be your next step? I mean, obviously, like, desire, but he's 5. Obviously, we can teach him desire, but would we want to teach him, well, what do other people want? What do you, like, if your friend's asking for a toy, they also want. So you understand, like, himself, he wants, but relating it to other people, we want to further his language development, and I want to give him more access and all these things. And I don't want to just accept want. I want. I desire to give him more.
Yeah.
So I was just curious your input on that.
Yeah, so the question is, after you teach I want, what's the next step? I think you can kind of do a twofold approach. You can do exactly what you say and work into what other people want. So the child already knows the word. You're not teaching the vocabulary word want anymore, but you are making it a theory of mind goal where they understand that different people like different things. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And the other prong of that is that I would start adding in just more early developing mental state words. I don't know if I would do wish, but need, like, really like and don't like probably are good next steps for a kid. Just really trying to give them as much control over their environment as they can. That'll improve behavior. It'll let them communicate what they need. Yeah. Hold on, let me bring this over. Hold on. Sorry.
When you were sharing, when you were sharing earlier about the wheel of emotions, it kind of reminded me of Shades of Meaning, if anyone has used that, where you have a base word and then you go up in intensity with each level. So like you might start with scared and then go up to afraid and then go up to terrified and then petrified. And as the shade gets darker, you increase the intensity of the word.
I love that. That's great. And if any of you guys use the Castle's checklist, one of the goals on there is that they use and understand intensifiers. It was so scary. It was very scary. But anytime you're using an intensifier, there's probably a synonym that you can use as well. So they do need to know it was very scary, it was so scary, but also it was terrifying. I love that. Yes.
I have a student who's from another country who just arrived in the last year, who is probably autistic, almost completely blind. And so what I've been noticing in the classroom is, and it's really an issue, is that it's an entire cluster of autistic students, and they have all of these wonderful, loud songs about emotions. And when you think about how a song is sung, everything sounds exciting and fun, even angry, sad, worried, and all of the visuals are the only thing that actually show the difference. And so when this child is asked, one of the few things he can say is, "I am angry," and he has no idea what it means. So it's for kids who are blind or completely blind and may also have autism, which means they don't understand feelings, it's pretty lost out even how to, get them to the first state of what that all is. If you have any thoughts about it.
I think that's a great thing to ask about, and I think it pulls me back to the whole idea of really being explicit. If he's eating his ice cream and you can tell he's pretty happy, and you say, "How are you?" and he says, "I am angry," correct it. You are not angry. You are happy. And then when they are having big feelings, like my daughter is just chronically experiencing jealousy right now, and I will just say, this is how it feels to feel jealous. Now you're angry. This is angry right now. It doesn't feel good. It's really bad, and you're mad. Your eyebrows are feeling furrowed. You are angry. But when you were eating ice cream, you were not angry. Just making it super, super explicit. I mean, along those lines, now I have a 4-year-old that's like, "I'm so jealous." And I'm like, ugh, God.
You hold it, sorry. Sure. I just wanted to say, too, that to piggyback on that, I think the emotion word disappointed and disappointment is a huge one. And I think a lot of challenging behavior comes from feeling disappointed. So when kids can understand that feeling and can express it, it can help a lot with behavior.
Yeah, I completely agree. And a lot of times disappointed comes from some sort of a misunderstanding too. Oh, you're disappointed. You thought when I picked you up we were going to do this, but it's not till next week. You thought this, but I thought this. Yeah, for sure. Any other things bubbling up? Yes, I'm right here.
So is there like a difference that you've learned between like maybe kids who have cochlear implants and then like, I guess deaf, like, who are primarily sign language, users? Because like you were saying, like befuddled or like certain words I feel like aren't in sign language. Is that right? Like.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's asking about sign language and some of these words where there might not be a specific sign for it. This is a really great question, and it's a great point for us to bring up. Like right now is probably a good time to talk about it. So in sign language, there is a different sign for a lot of different feelings. And if I get this wrong at all, correct me, because I need to learn as well. There's a different sign for a lot of different feelings, but sometimes when things are very, very intense, it's the same sign, and you might show it as with your facial expression or with your hands, your body language, and that tells you that it's very intense. Where like if in spoken English, we might use a whole different word. And the advice that I give you here is to finger spell really often with those words that don't have a different sign. So yeah, maybe you sign exhausted, maybe you sign very, very tired instead of exhausted, but then you also finger spell exhausted out so that they learn to recognize that when they're reading it and they know what that word is. Because in literacy, it's not going to be very, very, very tired. It's going to be exhausted. Anybody have any thoughts on that? This is something that I'm kind of always getting my head around. I love sign language. I wish that I understood sign language, but it's not a part of the world that I'm in every day, so I'm learning.
Just a super quick example from my student teaching. I still remember this. I'm 23 years into teaching. I still remember totally deaf girl talking with her hearing impaired peer, and she said, "Oh, you know that old person?" And she stopped and said, "Not old person," and she spelled elderly. And I was blown away that she, as an 8th grade deaf girl, corrected a peer and said, "It's not old person, it's elderly," and stuck with me. Just the exact example that you're saying, that it's out there, it's accessible. We need to teach it to them. She had an awesome interpreter who did that for her, and there is ways. Just have to be conscious of it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And she knew that socially, one of them is more appropriate than another. I mean, very cool. I can see why you remembered that forever. Yeah, being able to finger spell things, I think, helps understand nuance when you would use one versus another. They're irritated and frustrated are similar, but they're a little bit different. If I said, "Oh, I'm just feeling frustrated," that just doesn't pack the punch that I'm like, "I'm irritated," it's just different. Any other thoughts? Okay, welcome back from lunch. I heard a lot of great discussions. Actually learned quite a bit myself over here talking to our 2 interpreters. So thank you all for all you have to offer. We're going to continue diving into literacy. This is just the last slide that I have here on literacy. And it's a suggestion for those of you that are working with kids at the age where they're writing narratives and writing stories. If they're writing a story, I would encourage them to pick maybe 3 new mental state words and include them in their story. And then read their story and make sure that they're using them appropriately. They understand how. This is a great, safe way for them to add mental state words to their vocabulary without having to try it out on their friends or family at the dinner table. And you can give them feedback and say, "Hey, I really like how you used perplexed and amused, but I'm not sure that the word relieved was used totally right. Let's talk about it again because I want to make sure that you understand it." So, like I said, literacy has to do with them reading, but they're also writing, they're creating these stories. Let's add mental state words to that process too. All right, we already kind of answered a bunch of questions about mental state words, so I'm going to move on unless anyone has a burning mental state question. Okay. To perspective taking. This is when you take the perspective of another person. It's one level up from mental state words. Kids should be able to start taking the perspectives of others between like 2 to 3 years old, and it's something that we work on throughout our whole life. So we can teach this by kind of looking at it in different ways. There's interpersonal perspective taking, and that's where the child considers how the characters in the book are feeling. So if you look at the cat in the hat here, you would ask a child, how do you think mom, the mom in the book, is going to feel about this mess? So you're asking the child to take the perspective of the characters. But there's also intrapersonal perspective taking, where you ask the child to determine how they would feel in that situation. So in this one, Berenstein Bears Learn to Share, the child applies the book to their own personal experience and says, do you remember when you felt that way? So if you think back to the Llama Llama one, look, he feels concerned that his friend is crying. Have you ever felt worried about your friend crying? That type of a thing. And what I just did there too, it's a technique I made up, and I'm sure there's a word for it. I link synonyms together. Oh, he looks concerned. Have you ever felt worried? You're not actually explicitly teaching it. You're pairing the synonyms together so that they link in the child's mind. You were happy. In fact, you were elated. So if they give you those early words, validate it, say it back, and give them a new one. With perspective taking, there's also looking at people's different desires. I'm taking your perspective. You like something different than me. These characters like different things, or these people believe different things. So one of the best books that I've found with diverse desires is I Like Bees, I Don't Like Honey, and this is one of the ones that was in the giveaway. I like this book for a lot of reasons. It very explicitly talks about how different people like different things. It starts with, I'll tell you something that's a little bit funny. Jackson likes bees, but he doesn't like honey. But then it also goes into some body safety things. Some people don't like being hugged. They might want a fist pump. Some girls want to skateboard. They don't want to play with dolls. It's a very inclusive book. So I like this book for a whole lot of reasons, but this is explicit. Different people like different things. My kids have heard me say that so many times, they say it now. They're like, different people like different things, and it's great. Another couple of really good books for perspective taking are Spoon and Ladybug Girl. If you're not from, I tried to pick books that are very popular generally. So if you don't know all these books, hopefully you'll at least know a few of them. So with Spoon, he is talking to his mom about how he's jealous of fork, knife, and chopsticks because they get to do different things, like chop things, fork gets to go everywhere, chopsticks are exotic. And then she says, but I mean, they're probably a little bit jealous of you too. You get to spin around in a hot cup of tea, you get to measure things, bang on pots and pans. And he says, I never really thought about it that way. So it's just a nice way of addressing jealousy and envy. Different people have different things. Different things are not necessarily better or worse, they're just different. And then Ladybug Girl and Bumblebee Boy is really great for looking at pretend play, which these kids need help with. And these two friends want to play different games on the playground. They've decided we're playing together, but they can't settle on something to play with. And then finally they come up with an idea and they're gonna be Ladybug Girl and Bumblebee Boy. And so that's a great one for teaching pretend play. Different people like different things, perspective taking. Look at your 5-book list again and see if perspective taking falls into any of those categories. Are you able to take different people's perspectives using some of those books? This is not literacy-based, but this is a great activity, especially with the young kids. A lot of times kids in school will do an All About Me poster. It's a good option to change it to All About You instead. So maybe have them sit with a friend and their friend is able to say what they like and they cut out magazine pictures or something like that and they make a poster for their friend and then present out on their friend. I don't really like Oreos, but my friend loves Oreos. So I put it on his All About Me poster or make one for Dad. I don't like lawnmowers and gardening, but my dad loves lawnmowers and birdhouses, so that's going on his poster. It just gets a kid thinking about, okay, I'm not gonna cut out this thing that I do really like because this person doesn't. There's impulse control, there's empathy forming. And these things are important for friendships because like let's say a little boy wants to play with a girl, but her favorite thing is dolls and his favorite thing is dump trucks. If he understands, I want to play with her, he will bring over to her a doll and not a dump truck. And that's the kind of thought processes that this work will eventually develop. Last night I went out to dinner downtown with one of my best friends and I got there before her and she likes Pinot Noir, I like Cabernet. I'm not gonna order her a glass of Cabernet. I'm gonna order her a glass of Pinot Noir. This is how it reflects as we get older and as we become more insightful friends. When you remember things about people, maybe it's not what you like, but this is what this person likes, and I'm gonna respect you for that difference. Okay, another way to look at it, like I mentioned, is false beliefs. Different people can believe different things. I don't have this book. If you can ever find this book, hold on to it because it's hard to come by, but it's brilliant. It's an accordion style book, and on one side of it, it's blue, and on the other side of it, it's yellow. And you read it frontwards, and then you flip it over, and you can read it again backwards. Every picture on the front is the same as the back, only the words are different. And it's called It's Useful to Have a Duck, and then you turn it over, and it says It's Useful to Have a Boy. And it's the reasons why they find the same thing useful. So I should have a picture on here and I don't, I'm sorry, but there's one picture of a little boy with a duck on his head, and it says, I use the boy to see things that are far away. And then when you flip it over and you read it the other direction, it says, it's useful to have a duck, he is my hat, or something like that. So exact same picture, two totally different ways of interpreting it. The duck says, this is my little hiding place at night, and the boy says, this is the stopper on the drain in my bathtub. So it's just very, very, very cute. Neither of them are wrong. They have different beliefs, and both of their beliefs are valid. Another great book for this is called The Fort. I have it over here. There's a dilapidated tree fort in the forest, and a boy and a girl both find it at different times, and they play with it differently. But then they meet together in the middle one day by accident, and they argue over what the fort is. It has a lot of great mental state words. The prince discovered that the castle was not how he left it. He daydreamed about the royal feast he was planning. He imagined music and food. And then the pirate comes and does the same thing. She daydreamed, she imagined, and what ultimately happens is they both scrap their plans and they turn it into a spaceship. So it's great for pretending, great for imagination, great for mental state words, great for different people believe different things. They both believed the fort was something different. Look at your 5 books again. If you have diverse thoughts in there, are they diverse desires, diverse beliefs? Do people in the book believe different things? There's a difference of opinion. This is found all over adult books. A very common writing prompt for high schoolers, if they read the book The Catcher in the Rye, is what they think about Holden Caulfield, the character in this book. I don't like him at all. I think he's not a good kid. But there's a lot of ways that you can argue why he is how he is. You can really celebrate him as a hero, and a lot of angsty teenagers do. And so being able to read a book and take different opinions, especially as kids are writing essays and going through debate club and having to say, okay, I can argue this way, or I can argue it this way, I can see it 2 different ways, is really important. This next slide I am not going to linger on. I'm just letting you know that it's a reason why this is a problem for adults too. Okay? Different people believe different things. Doesn't mean that anyone is necessarily definitely right or definitely wrong, but I think if we can, as humans, all come to a middle ground where we're willing to listen and understand and put ourselves in other people's shoes, I think we'll be more likely to have friends. Okay, so that's mental state words and perspective taking. How are we doing on analyzing our own books, thinking maybe of some books that we could use moving forward with our kids? Would anybody like to shout out a book that they're excited, that they already know about, it's on your bookshelf, but you're excited to use to target these words? Yeah. Hold on, I'll bring it.
I teach middle school and deaf and hard of hearing students. And while they're at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, their reading level is at like a 3rd-ish grade. And we started reading A Boy Called Bat by Elena K. Arnold. And it's about a student that has autism, and it kind of goes through his day in school and his trouble with friendships. And I think perspective taking for sure. Inferencing, especially like I have a student in my classroom that struggles the same way, so I'm trying to show her that, hey, this character struggles in the same way that you do, and also providing like a role model for her through literacy and reading it. It's an early chapter book, so if your students are at that age, it would be good to check out.
It's A Boy Called Bat?
Yeah. Bat.
Bat. Okay, A Boy Called Bat. That's a great suggestion. Yes, come in.
I wrote down the book that I love, The Day the Crayons Quit. And instead of every page, the crayons are complaining and talking about why they're quitting their job as crayons. And it's funny to read and be like, oh, why did the peach crayon want to leave versus why did the green crayon want to leave? You know, this it's a really, really cute book. And then the follow-up is the day the crayons came back. And you're like, oh, they changed their feelings. Well, how did their feelings change and why did they come back?
That one should be one that I have up here. It comes up in every suggestion of Theory of Mind books. The Day the Crayons Quit is a great suggestion. All right, I'm going to move on to predictions. Let you guys switch out. So it's important for kids to be able to predict the behavior of others. That allows them to change their behavior. It allows them to adapt socially, and we can teach that with books. When we look at making predictions, there are 3 different types of questions that we can ask kids. The first is the easiest, yes, no. The second is a little bit harder. They have a few options to choose from. And the third is the hardest, it's open-ended. So with the book Corduroy, an easy yes, no question would be, hey, what do you think is gonna happen? Do you think that he's gonna find his button? It's just yes or no. It's getting the kids thinking about, I'm gonna make a prediction about Corduroy's behavior. In Goodnight Gorilla, I chose this book because everybody knows it. What's a prediction yes, no question that you could ask? You can shout it out and I'll repeat it. Does the gorilla get out of the zoo? Do you think the gorilla is going to get out of the zoo? Yeah, that's a great one. You could ask, do you think that he's going to unlock this cage next? Yeah, exactly. Where do you think do you think the gorilla is going to go to his house? Yes, no questions are easy. Harder is giving a few options. So if you think about Goldilocks and the 3 bears, Goldilocks breaks in and then she violates Baby Bear's bowl of porridge and then his chair. So there's a pattern of bad baby bear violation behavior that you've established. And so you can ask the child, as Goldilocks goes upstairs, whose bed do you think she will sleep in? And if the kid has picked up on the pattern, she should be able to predict the behavior of Goldilocks. I think Goldilocks is going to sleep in Baby Bear's bed. If the child says Mama Bear, you can go back and say, well, you know what? She really liked Baby Bear's porridge and Baby Bear's chair. Why do you think Mama Bear would be your answer? So getting a child to start to look for patterns of behavior through literacy will help them realize that with friends. This kid keeps playing with this toy. This is this person's favorite movie. We watched it at their house 3 times. Different people like different things. Okay, with Goodnight Gorilla, what's a open-ended question that you could ask? Not open-ended, a question with limited options. Sorry if you don't know Goodnight Gorilla. Which cage do you think he'll open? Yeah, which cage do you think he'll open next? Armadillo, giraffe, or aardvark? Yep, that's exactly what I'm thinking, yeah. Do you think that he's gonna go to his house, a neighbor's house, or back to the zoo? That type of a thing. Just if it's something's hard for a child, make it easier. Okay, and then with the Gruffalo is a good example of making things the hardest. You can make them open-ended. Hey, what do you think is gonna happen next? How do you think they feel? Why do you think that happened? You're not giving them any options. It's not yes, no. They don't have 3 options to choose from. And this really lets you know, does this kid have this concept or not? So these are great ways that you can see if a child is following along with a story and kind of looking to the future and being able to say, I think I know, because I'm reading this character's behavior. I can guess what's gonna happen next. So then with Goodnight Gorilla, what could you ask? There's really no wrong answer. Yeah, why do you think he wants to get out of the zoo? And there's not a wrong answer there. The zookeeper has better food at his house, you know, anything, yeah. So those are ways that you can make question asking with predictions kind of an activity. Another way that you can look at making predictions is with flat books. I feel like flat books kind of get overlooked. They're just for babies, but flat books are actually really great for therapy because you can't see what's underneath, and so everybody can make different guesses. So you could say something like, what do you think is under the flap? Well, okay, what do you think is under the flap? Maybe have the whole class guess, especially if it's a book that they're not familiar with yet. What do you think is going to happen? Okay, let's go see. Everybody's making a different prediction, and we can see which one it is. I'm going to play a video clip of one of my friends in Texas. She's a speech pathologist. She's with both of her kids that are typically hearing, but she does a really nice job of using flat books and mental state words to target theory of mind. Hold on, I got to turn this on. Sorry.
Gonna open. I'm gonna guess that there's the driver inside. Cece, what do you think is inside?
Door.
The door? Robert, what do you think is inside?
The driver.
The driver, like me? Let's open it. Who is this?
No, that's a girl.
It is a girl. Who is it, Cece?
But that's a...
Oh, Robert and I thought it was the driver, and you thought it was the door. Try one more time. Hi, girl. Okay, let's turn the page. Yeah, she does not want rain on her face. Robert, do you like rain on your face?
Yes.
Yes, Cece, do you like rain on your face?
No.
No, Robert likes it. Cece does not like it. Oh, and there's those wipers. They go swish, swish, swish. Oh, your turn. Good job, big girl. Do you think Robert wants to pull this?
Yes. I want to.
Oh, well, hang on. Let's ask Cece. Cece, do you think Robert wants to pull that?
No.
He doesn't want to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we give him a turn?
No.
No. I think it would be nice to give him a turn.
No.
Oh, look, we're making him feel sad. Do you see him feeling sad? Oh, we'll just take care of you.
It's okay, Baba. It's okay, Baba. I want
We give him a turn? Let's give him a turn. Oh, that's a nice idea. What are they doing?
They're sleeping.
You think they're sleeping?
Yeah.
Robert, what do you guess that they are doing? Are they sleeping?
No.
What are they doing?
Crying.
Oh, Robert guesses they are crying. Says they're saying, Cece, look.
Wah, wah, wah.
How do they feel?
They just know.
Are they happy?
No.
No. Are they sad?
So she does a lot of great things there. She's bringing the kids into the story, their own personal experience. She's guessing with the flat books. I think there's a lot that you can do with barrier activities where you can't see the other side. Another way that you can look at books with predictions is books that have surprise endings. So you can predict pretty regularly with Green Eggs and Ham that he is not going to eat the green eggs and ham, but then at the end you can, he's down in the water and you can say, what do you think? He hasn't been eating it. Do you think he's going to take a bite? And then the child can make that final prediction, yes or no. He might take the bite of Green Eggs and Ham or he might not. These are some books that also have surprise endings. These are all great suggestions for things that have kind of a twist at the end where you can say, that's not what I predicted, that's not what I thought was going to happen. Surprise endings are always a really great way to talk about what people are thinking. And mystery books are also really great for predictions. If you've got kids that love mysteries, especially like middle school and high school, getting them to a place where they can predict what's going to happen, those whodunits, that's all about predicting behavior. How did you know that that guy was the bad guy? Oh, when he said that, that gave it away. So any kind of mystery where they're trying to figure out something based on behaviors of others is great for theory of mind. Okay, I'm going to move on to false belief. False belief is theory of mind. When researchers say that a child has acquired theory of mind, it means they're passing false belief assessments. False belief emerges typically between like 3 to 6 years old. And false belief is the ability to understand it's possible for someone to believe something that's not true. So here are false beliefs. Mom keeps looking for her keys in her purse because she doesn't know where that they're hanging on the hook in the kitchen. Sam is jealous that Karen went out to lunch with another guy, but he doesn't know that it was her brother. Elliot's putting on his raincoat because he thinks that it's still raining out. Pretty much every rom-com chick flick has a false belief in it. False belief comprehension is central to young children's ability to adapt to their social world. It's among the most studied milestones in theory of mind development because it signals the emergence of an ability to represent beliefs as distinct from reality. False belief performance is correlated with connectedness of conversation, teacher ratings of social competence, and elaborate joint pretend play. And so this is how it looks in the scheme of what we've been talking about. We started with talking about social emotional development. Theory of mind is a part of social emotional development. False belief is at the heart of theory of mind. So what happens if you don't understand false belief in daily life? You assume that everybody knows what you know. If you ate all the cookies and dad's still at work, you're gonna be worried the second he walks home because he already knows that you ate all those cookies. And that's where kids are typically when they're around 2 and 3 years old. You can't predict how someone is going to respond. You can't adapt your behavior based on what you think they're thinking. And you can't clarify misunderstandings. And that's huge for friendships. You have to be able to say, oh, you totally thought that I did this thing, but I didn't. Don't be mad at me. So misunderstandings are at their baseline false beliefs. I already mentioned this earlier, but I use this phrase all the time. You thought this, but they thought this. You have a false belief about this thing. Let me give you some more information so that now you know. Hold on just a second. So false belief typically develops between 3 and 6 years old, with most kids coming online between 4 and 5. Kids with hearing loss are typically understanding false beliefs later. So kindergarten is when they need to have understood false beliefs, and many of them are not. And that can cause some problems. We'll talk about it in a minute. But how are we measuring false beliefs? How do we test these kids? There are a couple of tasks that researchers developed in the 70s to assess whether or not a child understands false beliefs. You might remember some of these from like college psychology classes. The first one is the unexpected contents task. And this is where you show a child a common container, Band-Aids, M&Ms, in this case it's Smarties, and you say, what do you think is inside? And they say, Smarties, Band-Aids. And then you say, okay, well, why don't you open it up and look? And the child opens it, and it's something different. Oh, it's pencils. And then you say, okay, close the box. What do you think your friend Jenny would say if she came in and she saw the box? What would she say is in it? A child that understands false beliefs will say she'll think that it's Smarties. A child that doesn't will say she'll think it's pencils. You can do this test tomorrow. This is an easy assessment. I'm going to play a quick video clip of a child answering this incorrectly.
Psychologists argue that we can see the difference between having and not having a theory of mind in simple experiments, called false belief tasks. First of all, the child has to establish the fact that their own belief is false. Then they have to put themselves inside the mind of another child in order to predict that child's beliefs.
Now, Elizabeth, what do you think's inside this box?
Smarties.
Have a look inside.
Can't take the lid
Oh,
off.
well, let me have a go, shall I? You ready? Say go. Go. What's in there? What's that?
Pencils.
Oh, right. Should we put them back in the box?
Yeah. What are they for?
Should we put the lid on? Now, can you remember what's inside the box?
Pencils.
And what did you think was in the box?
Pencils.
Did you? Now, I'm going to show this box to Jay in a minute. What will Jay think is in the box?
Pencils.
Ready? Good.
So it's a phenomenon where kids kind of come online between 3 and 6. At least they should. And these kids with hearing loss are answering pencils later than the average kid. So when we were looking at all those research studies earlier and they're saying that they understand false beliefs or whatever, it's that they're passing tasks like this that look at, do they understand a false belief or not? Hold on. So what happens if we don't understand false beliefs in literature? A lot of times we miss the entire plot, the point of the story. We have trouble empathizing with characters, which is so important. We have trouble predicting what's going to happen. We have trouble inferring what the author is not saying. So we're going to look at Disney because, especially the old Disneys, sorry, yes, you've got a question. The ability to he wants to know the definition of false belief. The definition of false belief is the ability to understand that someone can believe something that is not true. So if you ate all of the Oreos before Dad got home and he got home and you understand false beliefs, you can say, the dog ate the Oreos. You know you can plant a lie and a false belief in Dad's head. But if you don't understand that, he's going to walk in the door and you're going to think he already knows. Does that make sense? Yes?
If you are working with a student with a cognitive impairment from whatever accident or they don't have false belief, but they are a much older student.
Yeah.
There's some just cognitive reasoning that it will just never come.
Yeah, so the question is, if you have a child that has a cognitive disability and that's preventing them from really understanding false belief, how do you deal with that? There is a lot of great information for like remedial intervention on children with autism that would probably apply typically with kids that fit that bill. There's where you're really having to teach explicitly to an older child how to think and how to know what other people are thinking and feeling. I would look at the autism research. There's a great workbook called Teaching Children with Autism to Read Minds, and it has exercises that older kids can do. All right, so we're going to look at Disney and false beliefs. I'm going to give you guys this first one. You have Timon and Pumbaa, and they have a false belief about Simba. Their false belief is that he is a regular lion. They do not know that he should be the king and the rightful heir. And that colors their friendship. They love him anyway. And as soon as Nala says, he's the king, Pumbaa gets down and goes, Your Highness. I mean, the whole friendship changes because they have a false belief. All right, let's look at another one, and I want you guys to think for a second. You've got Beauty and the Beast. What is her false belief? That he's really a beast, that he was born a beast and he'll die a beast, right? So the spell is interesting because of the false belief. He can't tell her, if you fall in love with me, I'm going to be a handsome French prince with a ponytail. He can't say that to her. She has to love him for his beastly self in order for the spell to be broken. That is why her falling on him and loving him is what breaks the spell, because he got to be so good that she could even love a beast. If you don't understand false belief, you do not get the love story in Beauty and the Beast. What about Aladdin and Jasmine? She thinks he's a prince. Yeah. What about Little Mermaid? Yeah, he thinks that she's a person. The Disney movies have gotten away from this in some ways. The new Moana one has the false belief isn't a critical part of the story. But I would challenge you right now to take a second, look at your 5 books, and tell me, is there false belief in any of them? Maybe write FB next to one that has false belief in it. I code every book on my kids' bookshelf based on whether it has false belief or not. My husband reads to them at night, and he'll get like halfway through the book, and he'll look at me and go, I see what you did there. That's a good one. So there's two types of false belief in literature. It's where the reader and the character experience a false belief. So you as the reader get to the end of the book and you're like, oh, I see, that's cute. There's a twist. And then there's one where just the character experiences a false belief, but not the reader. And that's like if you're watching a chick flick and you know that he's out to lunch with his sister, but she doesn't know. You have insider information and you're like, come on, figure it out. So these are three great books for times when the reader and the character experience false belief. I have all three of them up here. I don't have time to play all three videos, but I'm gonna play Poor Louie, I think, because it's a little bit harder to come by and probably fewer of you are familiar with it. It's very cute. As you watch it, you will, unless you're very good at making predictions, you'll probably have a false belief yourself and an aha moment at the end.
And now, Poor Louie. Written and illustrated by Tony Ficilli. Oh, hello. You're probably wondering what I'm doing here in the dark, by myself, with all this stuff. If you guessed that I tried to run away tonight, you're right. I did. Why? Well, that's a long story. I can tell you, if you'd like. My name is Louie, by the way. Or it was. Now they just call me Poor Louie. My life was great. Every morning started with a walk, rain, or shine. On Sundays, we would do fun things like go for a stroll in the park, eat ice cream, or go shopping. Pretty much every day of the week ended the same way. Dinner, a movie, a kiss goodnight, and then off we went to sleep. Once in a while, Mom and I would have a play date with her friends. It was great. Everyone paid attention to me. But then, one day, they started to appear. First, there was just one. Then two. Then four. They pulled on my ears and squeezed my tummy. Mom! Poor Louie. Yeah, I know. They smell good. And they do walk on all fours. I'll give them that. But geez. All I could say was, thank goodness we'd never have one of those in our house. Yep, life was pretty perfect with just the three of us. Then, let me tell you, things got weird. First it was dinner. Cold. On the floor. Poor Louie. I still had my walks, I guess. Sort of. Bedtime wasn't fun at all anymore. Pablo? Packard? Patrick? Paul? Peabody? Percival? Peter? Peyton? Packard. Over time, Mom's belly grew. And grew. And grew until one night, it kicked me. Bump. From that night on, I slept on the floor. Just me and my food dish. Things couldn't possibly get worse, right? Wrong. One day, Mom and Dad came home with lots of new stuff. At first, it seemed okay. There were 2 beds. Fun. 2 hiking pouches. Good, can't have enough of those. 2 sweaters. Cute. 2 hats. Okay, but wait a minute, I thought. What's that thing? 2 seats? And that's when it hit me. Poor Louie. One of those creatures I could handle, but 2? No way. Then Mom and Dad just rushed off and left me all alone. Not even a kiss goodbye. Well, that was the last straw. I got all of my things together and ran away. Forever. The coast was clear. I was on my way when... Louie, now how did you get out? I must have left the door open. Your Mom and Dad will be home soon. Back you go. And that's it. The end. My life is over. You can close the book now. Thanks for listening. Lou? Louie, meet your baby brother. My baby brother? My baby brother? Poor Louie.
I told you that there was false belief, and it still got some of you. The first time I read this, I was like, it's so good. It's so good. I was like, this is all about coping with twins. That's cute. That's what I mean by false belief, where the reader and the character are surprised. And a great way to tell is to talk to a kid about this is to go back and say, what did you think was going to happen? What really happened? So those kinds of books are great for theory of mind. Books where the character experiences false belief, but we don't, are books like Goldilocks. Goldilocks is a classic. The question that you would ask a child, and I mean, you could, seriously, you all could do this tomorrow, is very simple. Who does Goldilocks think is in bed? Yeah. Oh God, Goldilocks, sorry. Who does Red Riding Hood think is in bed? She thinks grandma's in bed. But a child that doesn't understand false belief and doesn't really have a lot of impulse control is gonna look at the bed, look at who's in it, and say the wolf. So it takes executive functioning, impulse control to say, oh, wait, yeah, no, she thinks it's grandma for sure. So this is a really, really, really great book if you don't want to do that Smarties test, to just spot check a kid on whether or not they understand false belief. Another really great one where the character experiences false belief, but as we go along, the reader does not, because the reader can see more, is The Wall in the Middle of the Book. This book is brilliant. I'm going to play this one for you. It's also animated. It's just very cute. You could use this just on an iPad in school and YouTube if you didn't want to buy it.
Books. The wall in the middle of the book. There's a wall in the middle of the book. And it's a good thing. The wall protects this side of the book from the other side of the book. book is safe. The other side is not. But the most dangerous thing on the other side of the book is the ogre. If the ogre ever caught me, he'd eat me up. That's why I'm glad there's a wall in the middle of the book and that I'm on this side of it. Huh? Wait a second. What's going on? This is not supposed to happen on this side of the wall. Wow! Thank you so much! Oh no! I'm on the other side of the book. And you're the ogre who's going to eat me up. Ha ha ha! I'm actually a nice ogre. And this side of the book is fantastic. Come on, I'll show you around. Hey, ogre, wait for me.
So what was his false belief? Yeah, that the other side of the book was dangerous, and you were able to see over and over again, it's not dangerous. The scary animals are afraid of a mouse. The ogre's not going to punish the mouse. Meanwhile, the water is rising. So much dialogue can be had here. What does he think? Why does he think it? Did he change his mind? Why did he change his mind? How was he wrong? Have you ever thought one thing and then realized you were wrong? Just so much that can be done with that book. These are all really great books for false belief. I think most of them were available to grab. Kitten's First Full Moon is really great. Kitten thinks that the full moon is a bowl of milk. Just super, actually, you know what, let me walk you through some of these just because I think they're all worth it. Mickey Moonbeam is unique because Mickey has a friend who he video conferences with, almost like a pen pal, and then they decide that they're gonna meet up in outer space. And Mickey can't find him and says, I'm gonna fly up to the top of that hill over there and see if I can find you. And then he realizes that the hill is his friend. And they realize that they thought that they were the same size because they were on video. And they didn't realize that he was much bigger and that he was much smaller. Things that seem one way can actually be deceiving. This is perspective taking, realizing that your belief was false. I think this one's really great for visual perspective taking. This is Kitten's First Full Moon. Kitten keeps trying to lick the moon, but because she thinks it's a bowl of milk. It's very cute how Kitten keeps chasing after the moon, but the moon stays put because she wants the milk. Finally winds up in chasing the reflection of the moon in a pond, and then her owner gives her a bowl of milk. So she has the false belief that the moon is milk. Storm is Coming is one of my all-time favorites. This was also a giveaway. The farmer tells the dog I guess, a very southern accent, "Storm is coming." And so Dog thinks Storm is a person and has no idea what Storm is. And so the dog gets all the animals in the barn and says, "Oh no, even the sun is hiding." But Dog says, "No, no, no, the dark is good. Storm can't find us in the dark." And then they say, "Oh no, it's raining, Storm is knocking." And he says, "No, no, no, it's just the rain. The rain will wash away our tracks, so Storm can't follow us." Same thing with lightning and thunder. All of the hallmarks of a storm are actually good things because they keep storm away. And then at the end, the cat says, did I miss Storm? And Dog says, "No, Storm never came." And then he ran out to play in the sunshine. So it's cute because Storm definitely came. The dog actually liked all the things that are typically scary for kids. And you can ask the child something like, did the storm really come? What did the dog think? What really happened? Just a great book for that. This is what the internet says is great for middle school plot twists. I did not have time to read a million chapter books. You guys might be familiar with some of these. The advice that I have to you is just to have, if you work with middle school kids, have plot twists on your radar. Those are great things to talk about. Did you see that coming? What would have given it away? If you went back and read it again, would you be able to figure it out? That kind of hindsight bias is a part of theory of mind, being able to say, oh, I should have seen it coming. These are some more suggestions that the internet has for middle schoolers. I'll let you read those for a second. These are some suggestions for high schoolers. They don't all have to be mysteries and things like that. There can be trickery and things that are going on as well. And that brings me to kind of this next slide, which is that any kind of book with lying or deception or trickery has to do with false beliefs. So all of those books, like the Aesop's fables about the fox getting away with all this stuff, all of those trick books are false beliefs because the fox is planting this false belief in their mind. Sure, gingerbread man, hop on my nose, I'll carry you across. That's a great time to say, do you trust the fox? Do you think he really will? Why or why not? So these are two really great books for working on deception, lying, and trickery. Are you guys familiar with either one of these? They're a little bit less common. Okay, I have both of them up here. With The Bear Ate Your Sandwich, it's very cute. There's just a story of a bear that ate a guy's sandwich and then how he ran away and everything. And then when you get to the very end of the book on the last page, you see that the story is actually being told from the point of view of a little dog that looked this very guilty next to the remains of a sandwich, trying to explain it to a little boy, and the little boy just hears woof, 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 woof. So the bear did not eat anybody's sandwich. You just invested 5 minutes reading a book about a bear that doesn't actually exist. The dog is lying, and the little boy can't understand him anyway. So that's a great one for deception and trickery. And then Toads on Toast is really great too. A fox decides that he wants a recipe with baby frogs in it. He gets a bunch of toadlets, he's gonna cook them, and then the mom comes in and says, I'm gonna give you a recipe. It's called Toads on Toast, but her recipe doesn't involve any toads. And so finally the fox realizes, hey, there's no toads in this, and she's like, just try it. And he loves it and gives up on eating her babies. So she tricks him as well. So anytime there's trickery, which a lot of these books have, it's a great time to talk about who was thinking what, who was telling the truth. And this is common in movies, this is common in books. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, if anybody has seen this. These two are simultaneously tricking each other. She needs to write a story and he needs a date for some social reason. So neither of them are actually interested in each other, but they have to convince the other person that they're interested, and it all comes to a head. So this is double trickery. And then in The Great Gatsby, it's a little bit similar. Gatsby's trying to trick Daisy. Tom is trying to trick Daisy. It all ends in murder. Most of the books and movies, if you look for them, they have an element of this that you can talk about. Okay, that's the end of the false belief section. See why I think it's amazing? False belief is huge. It's just like, it's absolutely everywhere. Okay, I'm going to move on to inferencing. Inferencing is when you have to read between the lines by what's not being said. And authors use inferencing a lot, and the SAT asks questions that require inferencing. So teaching inferencing is really important. Here's an example of inferencing. Hey, do you want to go on a long hike? I ran a marathon yesterday. Do you think he wants to go on a hike? No, but he didn't say no. So a lot of times we're finding that kids with hearing loss are having trouble inferencing, and it can be taught through reading, through literacy. A great book for inferencing is Stone Soup. I chose this one because most people are kind of familiar with this story, but if you're not, there are a couple of soldiers that come to a town, and they're hungry, and they ask the townspeople for food, and they say, we don't have any food. And so they trick them. But the book doesn't say, so they trick them. The book says, so they asked for a stone and a pot of water, and they set it to boil. They said, this is going to be so good, but it would be a little bit better if we had carrots. Somebody brings carrots. It'd be a little bit better if we had potatoes. Somebody brings potatoes. And at the end of it, they have this big, beautiful soup, and the townspeople say, wow, I cannot believe that you made this soup just from a few stones. And they never say tricked, deceived, they did this because. You have to read between the lines. So if you don't get this, you don't really understand that the plot of what was going on. So a great content question here is, why did the soup taste so good? Why do the townspeople think the soup tastes so good? Those types of deception and trickery questions. So the inferencing, this is inferencing using words. You can read this book with words. But some books don't use words for the inferencing, they use pictures. This Is Not My Hat is a really great word to work on, a really great book to work on inferencing with pictures. Has anyone read This Is Not My Hat? Okay, a couple of people. It's very, very cute. Since a lot of you guys haven't read it, I'm gonna play it because it's adorable. I will just say the animations in this are actually probably not as good as the actual book. So pay attention to the eyes of the big fish, because in the book it's a little bit more obvious what the big fish is thinking than it is in the video.
This is not my hat. This hat is not mine. I just stole it. I stole it from a big fish. He was asleep when he did it. And he probably won't wake up for a long time. And if he does wake up, he probably won't notice that it's gone. If he does notice that it's gone, he probably won't know it was me who took it. And if he does guess it was me, he won't know where I am going. But I will tell you where I am going. I am going where the plants grow big and tall and close together. It is very hard to see in there. Nobody will ever find me. There is someone who saw me already, but he said he wouldn't tell anyone which way I went. So I am not worried about that. I know it's wrong to steal a hat. I know it does not belong to me. But I am going to keep it. It was too small for him anyway. It fits me just right. And look, I made it, where the plants are big and tall and close together. I knew I was going to make it. Nobody will ever find me.
we are left to infer. Okay, it's a kid's book on inferencing. It's also a kid's book on false belief, the same idea. He's saying, he won't tell where I went, and the crab's going, like literally pointing on the same page. He doesn't think he's gonna tell, but did he? Lots of great conversations. What do you think happened in the plant area? I mean, I've had kids say lots of different things, right? You could just say, yeah, maybe he asked nicely and got it back. But this is a great book for that goal. These are good books for inferencing in middle school, if you want some of those suggestions. These are some other books that are good for inferencing in middle school. And on the right, it's kind of what you're looking for in terms of the inferencing. You should have all of these in your PowerPoint. I know it's small. All right, I'm gonna wrap up with hidden emotion. Hidden emotion is typically a higher level task, a little bit higher level. It emerges around the same time as false belief, but we're really trying to read people's hidden emotions all throughout life. Somebody's pretending to be happy, but they're really sad, they're hiding it. Humans are not always great at this. So with hidden emotion, somebody can appear one way, but can feel another way inside. So we'll narrow down emotion development. At 2, kids can talk about emotions, positive and negative. At 3, they understand that someone can feel an emotion different from theirs. Oh, you're happy about this, but I'm disappointed. And at 4, they start to appreciate that more than one emotion can be felt at the same time. And then after that, they start to realize that people can actually hide their feelings. They can have hidden emotions. Grumpy Monkey is one of the most brilliant books I think that has ever been written. It's very popular, but I don't know many people that have thought about it as complexly as I have. So we're going to watch the Grumpy Monkey story, and then I'll let you know all the different reasons why I think it's a really brilliant book.
Man, I don't know about you, but that monkey sure looks grumpy. One wonderful day, Jim Pansy woke to discover that nothing was right. The sun was too bright, the sky was too blue, and the bananas were too sweet. Jim was confused. What's going on? Maybe you're grumpy, suggested Norman from next door. I'm not grumpy, Jim insisted. On his walk, he met Marabou. Jim's grumpy, Norman told Marabou. Why are you grumpy, Jim? Asked Marabou. It's such a wonderful day. Grumpy? Me? I am not grumpy, said Jim. But look at how you're standing, Marabou said. It's true, said Norman. You're all hunched. So Jim loosened up. Then he ran into Lemur. Jim's grumpy, Norman told Lemur. Why are you grumpy, Jim? Asked Lemur. It's such a wonderful day. Grumpy? Me? I'm not grumpy, said Jim. Your eyebrows look grumpy, said Lemur. It's true, said Norman. They're all bunched up. So Jim raised his brow. Then he tripped over Snake. Oh no, said Norman. That's the last thing you need when you're feeling so grumpy. Grumpy? Me? I am not grumpy, said Jim. Then why that frown, said Snake. I think it's because he tripped over you, Norman whispered to Snake. So Jim put on a smile. Finally, Jim looked happy, but he didn't feel happy inside. Everyone wanted Jim to enjoy this wonderful day. You should sing with us, said the birds. Jim didn't feel like singing. You should swing with us, said the monkeys. Jim didn't feel like swinging. You should roll with us, said the zebras. Jim didn't feel like rolling. You should stroll with us, said the peacocks. Jim didn't feel like strolling. You should lie in the grass. You should stomp your feet. You should take a bath and make a splash. You should hug someone. You should laugh. You should take a nap. You should eat old meat. Or some honey. You should jump up and down. You should sit in the sun. You should dance. But Jim didn't feel like doing any of that. Why are you grumpy, Jim? Asked the others. It's such a wonderful day. I'm not grumpy, shouted Jim as he beat his chest, and he stormed off. Jim felt sorry, a little sorry for shouting at everyone, but mostly sorry for himself. I guess I am grumpy, Jim sighed, and just as he was starting to feel really sad, he came upon Norman. Norman was slumped. His eyebrows were bunched up, and he was frowning. What's the matter? Are you grumpy? Asked Jim. No, I danced with Porcupine, said Norman. Are you okay? Asked Jim. It hurts, but I'll probably feel better soon enough, said Norman. Are you still grumpy? Yes, said Jim, but I'll probably feel better soon enough too. For now, I need to be grumpy. It's a wonderful day to be grumpy, said Norman. Jim agreed. And he already felt a little bit better.
It's such a good book on so many levels. Oops. So I'm going to show you why I think it's great. I like that it teaches physical appearance, especially if you have a child with autism. This is a great book for saying, this is what you're looking for somebody that doesn't feel good. Your eyebrows might be bunched, your shoulders might be slumped, you might be frowning. There's certain giveaways. And I like that it makes it explicit. It teaches that. It also teaches that someone can appear one way and feel another. I've not found that explicitly said in another kid's book. Finally, Jim looked happy, but he didn't feel happy inside. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, yes, you did it. It differentiates between emotional and physical pain. Norman looked the same. His eyebrows were bunched, his shoulders were slumped, and he was frowning, but not for the same reason. You can have a physical way of looking, and it can be for different reasons. He had physical pain where Jim was just grumpy. And then it emphasizes that it doesn't last forever. He moved on. He said, I just might need to be grumpy for a little bit. And it's okay to be grumpy for a little bit, and it's not going to be forever. And then one thing that I've noticed since I've been doing this workshop that I don't have in here is all of the really unhelpful suggestions from his friends. They say should about 20 times, and I'm trying to take that out of my own vocabulary. Sometimes what one person wants to do that cheers them up isn't something that will cheer someone else up, and sometimes we just need time. So it's just a great social emotional book on a lot of different levels, especially for hidden emotion. Okay, I want to go back to your top 5 books before we wrap up. Take a look at them and look through the lens of what we've learned today. Theory of mind with mental state words, perspective taking, making predictions, false belief, hidden emotions. Do any of your books fall into those categories? Is everybody hitting a 230 slump? Yes? Some of them do. Typically, you should be able to fit any book into at least one of those categories. So as you go through the library in your classroom, as you go through your kids' books at home or your own books, I challenge you to start categorizing them. I have a section for false belief on my kids' bookshelf, and they know what questions are coming at this point. But this is kind of how I categorize everything. So just as a reminder, kids are investigators. They are learning through this process. They're constantly trying to figure out how they feel. Am I hungry or am I angry? They're trying to figure out how other people feel, even when they look different on the outside than they feel on the inside. So let's give them all a little grace. Theory of mind is hard. It's why there are books like the 5 love languages, or 7 love languages, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, How to Make Friend books. I mean, there's a lot of self-help books for adults, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not good at this. So we can be aware of it ourselves, commit to making a difference and teaching these kids. So now that we know how to identify a book, what do? We make a plan. With any kid that you're working with, identify what level they're at. They know mental state words, but they don't know how to make predictions. They don't know that different people like different things. Or they can make predictions and they don't know, they don't understand false belief or hidden emotion. So kind of knowing what the next level is. And then if you're unsure, check them. Say to them, who does Little Red Riding Hood think is in bed? Start asking questions to figure out what level they're at, and then scale them up. And then finally, taking off our cape and transferring this information to caregivers, coordinating with them, pick a couple of false belief books and read them together, coach a middle school mom to rent a couple of mystery books from the library and read them together. Really just bringing them into your thought process of perspective taking is critical. You can conduct a literature review of what books a family has in their house. Go through like their top 10 favorite books, and then you don't have to buy them. You don't have to go to the library. You can just go to YouTube, and there's a read aloud of almost any book. You can see what these kids are reading, and then say, okay, work on false belief with this book and this kiddo. And then advise the parents on what to expect and when. And you have to use your own theory of mind. What can this parent handle? What can they not handle? What's a good conversation level for you to have with them about what to do next? So this is just kind of my final reminder slide. This is how this develops, and hopefully this is feeling more familiar by now. At 1, kids start to learn mental state words. 3 to 5, they take perspectives. 3 to 6, they're understanding false beliefs. 4 to 6, they're starting to infer. And at 6+, they're understanding hidden emotions. My argument is that this progresses across the lifespan. We're always learning and growing. It's not a check off of a checklist for these kids, but you can get the ball rolling for them. You can lay a really solid foundation so that they can take off. All right, and that concludes my presentation.